All right, we're live.
It's been a minute.
It's been a minute, man. Welcome back to another episode of 10 Horse Money YouTube channel on Tuesday Night Live. I've been doing a little bit of fishing and a little bit of landscaping, a lot of working. Life is good, dude. I haven't had hardly any downtime. Although I did the other night. I watched like 2 Western movies, man. I watched like I guess they're called Westerns. I don't know. You ever heard of the Magnificent Seven was one of them? It's been around for a while. It's about it's a town, and these outlaws like storm the town. They try to take it over, and they hold their ground, and a bunch of people are shot and blown up, and there's arrows flying everywhere. It was a classic movie. It was really good. And then I watched Part of Two for Texas, but that's the and I didn't even watch the whole movies. I just watched like 30 minutes of it or whatever, because I started feeling guilty because I got so much stuff to do. But I hadn't actually watched like a long section of a movie in a while, because I'm always, editing or just playing dad and husband and all that stuff. But it was a nice little guilty pleasure to sit down there and watch.
I tell you, y'all don't knock me. I love Westerns, but Westerns are like Lifetime movies to me. Like, before the movie starts, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know the ending. Like, it's somewhat anticlimactic. They can make it as dramatic as they want, but it's like we already know the storyline. My wife's cried 37 times over the exact same thing happening. We exchange actresses and a few actors, and we call it a different movie. But
so you say that my dad gets on to mom for watching Lifetime movies, and mom gets on to dad for watching Westerns all day. And I'm like you. I'm sitting back there going, you guys are watching the same thing over and over. I mean, mom's watching the girl came back from away, and she's going to get married, and the dog's going to die, and everybody's going to be happy at the end for some reason. And, Dad, Outlaw Josie Wales is the same one that you've watched 45 times.
Yeah.
Why are we watching it again? Well, I like it. Okay.
Yep.
So,
yeah, I love it.
It's like you said, it's very predictable. But I just got caught up in it. I enjoyed it, man. It was fun. But
well, it's got to be a relief from that back-breaking landscaping that you've been doing. It looks good out there.
Yeah, it's getting there, man. It's getting there.
You're just missing the substrate, right?
Yeah. So the deal is, our local quarry, which is 5 miles up the road, which is super, super convenient. I went up there about 3 weeks ago. I borrowed my father-in-law's dump trailer, and I had it hooked up to the truck, and I rode up there about 7:30 in the morning. They open at 6:30. I thought, well, I'll give them an hour for everybody that's, doing concrete. We got the big concrete trucks up there. I'll let them do their stuff, because they're actually, that's a business. They're trying to make some money. So I go up there, and I go in there. I say, hey, I need a load of that 1-inch clean white rock, and we don't have any. I'm like, what? You don't have any? She said, no, we don't have any. I'm like, that's like going to McDonald's and they're out of cheeseburgers or something. I was shocked. And, well, long story short, their screen was broke. They break that stuff down. I guess the screen has 1-inch gaps, and whatever falls through there, that's 1 inch. And then they have another size screen, and it cleans it up or whatever. Well, their screen is broke. So they said, call back in a week. I called back last Tuesday. It's still not fixed. They said, call back after the 4th of July. So we've got everything done that we can do. We're just waiting on this rock, and I'm wanting to get it. I don't like having a project and it just sitting idle. It drives me nuts. I mean, I'm motivated. When you're motivated to do something, I want to get it done. And the longer you let that stuff set up too, the weeds start growing back up. So you gotta, it was set up perfectly. We killed all the grass and stuff, and now we got to go and pick all the grass. And anyway, man, I'm just whining and crying over spilt milk kind of thing, but I'm ready to get that rock, and I'm ready to get it done so I can.
Well, you put it in the rearview mirror, and then you don't have to worry about it. You don't feel guilty.
And I want to look at it. I want to stand back. There's something about, every time I mow the yard almost, I kind of walk out there and I kind of look at it, and I'm like, hey, I got something done today. I feel good about that. I accomplished something. That's what I want to do with this landscaping project. I want to get it done. I want to look at it and say, that's what hard work does. You sit out there and you sweat for however many hours we were out there doing it. And my wife's a trooper, man. She's out there with me, and it's her.
You got to run in the tractor too.
Yeah, she learned how to lower that bucket, and she's a farm girl, So it's been fun, man. But any Facebook posts that I make of pictures of the house, and people are like, "That's a beautiful house." That's all my wife. She's the one that I'd have, if it was up to me, it'd be green pumpkin and black and blue siding, most likely. I'm just telling you. I'm just being straight up. That's probably what it'd be. And I wouldn't even know what green pumpkin looked like, really, because I'm halfway colorblind. But I just thank God they put labels on stuff, and then I know what it looks like or what it's supposed to be.
Well, somebody told you that when the watercolor looks like that, you should throw that one right there. And as long as it's labeled properly, you're good, right?
Yeah. So, Jake, what have you been up to, man? You
Whoa. It has been a wild couple months, man. The last few weeks has been kind of crazy. You know, we had the northern swing and kind of got out of that alive. Managed, I think we've got a 5 or 6 point lead, you know, in AOY. But I felt like leaving, you know, that tournament. I had a lot of plans with the family and a lot of, you know, kind of priorities here at home. Again, kind of playing dad like you, and but we were all, my wife and father-in-law, sister-in-law, and a couple of my buddies were all sitting around. I think it was the night after the cancel day, the last night, and said, "Man, we've got to go to St. Clair. Like with this lead, you know, you don't have this opportunity very often with AOY, and you know, I just don't. Regardless of what happens, I don't want to feel like I left anything on the table. You know, if Alec or even, you know, some of the other guys down the way there comes up and beats me, I'm going to live with that because I've given it everything that I have. And every moment that I've got, I'm spending, you know, towards St. Clair, kind of prepping, you know, rigging. I don't want to say rigging, but like I am in the process of stripping everything out of my boat. And let's just kind of get everything the way we, you know, need it. And I tell you, it's crazy how much stuff you can fit in a 21XE. Like I thought I was out of it was a little big bite. It's that little smallie smasher deal. Thought I was out of some of them like a week or so ago. It was up there at Champlain. It was driving me crazy because they were biting it, and now I'm out of them. Get here, and I've got like a dozen packs that were sitting right there. I mean, literally, they were like that far from my hands. But, you know, just trying to get everything prepared. Today's fishing world is like tournament fishing, I should say, is so much different than what it used to be. You know, we're all so good, and we all know where they live. We know how, you know, to catch them for the most part. We'll have some stump us every now and then, but for the most part, we're all really even. Like it's a very equal playing field as far as our knowledge base and our experiences. You know, the younger guys are spending exponentially more time on the water than what we've ever really been able to, and so they're learning again with resources just like this podcast and many other, you know, YouTube channels. There's so many things out there that these guys can and girls can learn from at such a rapid rate that we're all pretty well right there. And so to me this year, my main focus going into the season was really efficiency. And that's what I've concentrated on and really put a lot of my efforts into trying to make more casts. Again, I don't feel like that I can make a bass bite any better than the next guy. What I'm doing is I'm putting my bait in front of more bass than everybody else or most everyone else. And so that's really what I've spent the majority of my year working on. And it's cool. I've always kind of looked at in that direction, you know, kind of that Van Damme model of like, I'm going to make, you know, 1,000 more casts than you during the day. In this day and age, it's not all about making those casts, you know, as much as it is covering water, you know, smart, efficiently, and utilizing what you're seeing out there or even what you're not seeing, you know, the lack of activity to tell you and clue you into where things are happening. And so it's been fun. I've learned a lot this year. You know, we're always a student of the sport. The moment that we stop trying to learn is when we're really going to start falling behind. And so I always kind of keep that at the forefront. But this year it's been fun because I'm learning like not necessarily new techniques, but it's like new ways of doing things that are 30 seconds faster or, you know, 2 minutes here, a minute there. And at the end of a 3-day competition, I'm getting an extra 30 minutes to an hour of actual fishing time. And so it's been fun and kind of, again, I'm all about pushing I have to be careful in saying this, pushing the envelope in a very fair, a very, the right way. But if it's within the means of the rules, well within the means of the rules, like I'm always that thinker of trying to stay ahead and how can we do this just a little bit better. And so it's been really fun. And obviously it's, to some degree, it seems to be, working out for me. I'm almost a little scared to kind of change or do anything much different at this point.
Yeah, you got some good mojo going, man.
I was gonna say everything seems to be on the right path right now for you.
It's been building for a while, though.
That's fishing and really everything. Business, sales. It all kind of goes hand in hand, and it's hard to put a finger on it. It's hard to say this is the reasoning, and this is what why what's happening is taking place. But we've all felt it in our own, ways. Once you get that positive momentum and you start making good decisions, like it starts snowballing, and one good decision will lead to 2 or 3 more. And I don't know. It's hard to, gosh, I wish we could fine tune this and make this into something that's controllable. But it's just all I know to do is to ride it for as long as it's going to let us. And when we get bucked off, let's just try to get back as quick as we can, And again, without knowing what it is that's causing all of that, I know a lot of it is positivity and the people that you surround yourselves with. And I'm a firm believer in that. I don't want to say I'm a pessimistic person. I'm not, but I'm very realistic. And in being kind of a realist, it's you tend to kind of look at what tends to happen, like I don't want to say the negative, but like generally a realist is not going to look at the most like crazy outlandish, we're going to win AOY and yada 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 on through. So it's been it's been important for me to a lot of the guys that I've met this year and gotten to be really good friends with, and a lot of the roommates that I've gotten, and the people that I've surrounded myself with, I feel like have motivated me. They've pushed me. They've kept me in the game when things got a little squabbly. Like what's cool and fun. And I've not had a chance to go back and look at much of the live this year or anything like that. But it's like on paper, holy cow, this thing looks like unbelievable. I mean, it just looks like I go out there and the first 15 casts I make, I've got my bag and I just kind of, lollygag around the rest of the day. It has not been that way. Anybody that shared the boat with me this year during a tournament or practice, Eli's been videoing with me here for the last little bit. And it's kind of a reality check. He was like, holy cow, like this is, you find a way, but it's like going into these things, you never really know. I mean, it's very few of these, even you follow. Like, I knew what I was on. We all kind of knew what we were on, but you just don't know how those tournaments are going to go. And that's something I'm sure we'll get into, throughout this episode. And it's certainly something that I'm excited about, talking about. It's just everybody's so good at side imaging and down imaging. We understand where these offshore schools like to live. And so these offshore tournaments, which were, and still are to some degree, a lot of fun, they were a lot of fun because you had an astronomical amount of fish to yourself most of the time, like for the last 10 years. And you knew that kind of going in. And so now it's really not that way. I mean, again, at Eufaula, I'm not saying, I know I didn't find all those schools, but, I had maybe 25 or 30 schools, found a few, new ones in the tournament, had several that left, but around about 25 or 30. I'm going to say there were at least 50 or 60 schools, spread throughout the lake, but there were about 60 or 70 guys that were out there running around hitting schools. And so it's like you're inevitably rotating the same groups. And so knowing that in practice at any given moment, literally, I didn't do it a whole lot because I knew I could catch them, but you can pull up and catch a pretty good bag, like really easy. And so going into it, I knew that the potential was there. But if the dynamic of that tournament is just slightly different, I don't win. Potentially don't even make a check. And that's what's so, again, kind of another cool factor about, the invitationals and any, tour of this caliber, even at the Toyota level. When all these guys are that good, one small, the most minute of mistakes can be like 20 or 30 places. And so it's cool. You know, we were very fortunate in that tournament that the guys that were fishing offshore and you know, utilizing those schools were, I hate to say this because everybody has their own style, but in my opinion, a lot of, you know, along with a lot of other, you know, good offshore fishermen, like once you milk that school for what it's worth, whether they allow you to catch 2 or 3 or 20 or 30 of them, once the gig is up and they've kind of scattered out and they're not aggressive, they're not feeding, and you can't fool one anymore. Excuse me. The best thing to do is to get out of there and let that school, you know, regroup, whether it takes 30 minutes or 3 days. It depends on the school and kind of the conditions. But oftentimes you're just keeping that school from getting back together, you know, by continuing to throw in them and put pressure. So,
yeah.
Those guys in the tournament, we all kind of knew that. And we were just really playing a merry-go-round. Like you would just, once you burned a school out and you kind of knew everything was, you know, negative, you would crank the motor up and just start running from school to school until you found one that was open. And again, if everyone didn't really have that mentality and you know, we all kind of got to a school and sat on it all day and you don't allow everybody else to kind of come through and rotate, who knows where I end up in that tournament. So again, it's just, I enjoy every aspect of fishing, but the invitationals and playing at this level, competing at this level, everything is just exemplified and kind of at such a higher rate. It's so much more thrilling to me. I guess I'm very, very fortunate that, you know, I get to do this a lot. Maybe not necessarily tournaments, but fishing a lot and you know, over 200 days a year. And so things kind of dull themselves down. I mean, reeling a 5-pounder in is fun, but to have that little extra boost and a whole lot of cash behind that fish, it certainly adds a lot to it.
Yeah, back to kind of what you were saying about busting those schools out. We were talking a little bit about fishing. I fished a little derby over here last week, and we started on this school. I caught about a 3-pounder, which this lake's got a 18-inch slot. It's a 14-18 slot, so you can keep 2 over and 2 under in these little night tournaments. So, you know, a 17 and a half, 17 3/4 inch fish doesn't do any good, but still weighs 3 pounds. And caught that one. And then my next fish was like a little over 4-pounder. So that one went in the box. And then I caught a couple small ones. And then we caught some more, you know, nice 2 3/4, 3-pounders. And then there was 3 little, they were sort of schools. I'm talking 10 fish. You know, I almost call that like, that's a small school or a pod of fish. You know, it's not like a really big school of fish where there's 50 or 100, but they got a little bit busted up, and then they got acting really funky. Well, we were on this spot, and there was a boat that run by us and stopped on the point across, and they were looking our way about every 10 minutes. They wanted where we were at. They wanted where we were at. And they were looking, and they were looking. They kept looking. They kept looking. And then there was another boat coming down the bank on the opposite side, and they stalled out, and they were waiting, and they were waiting. So we had 3 other boats that were wanting to be right where we were at. So we had a decision to make. We know the winning fish are right here. There's no doubt about it. So do we stay here and continue to just kind of mix it up, switch baits, try different tactics and stuff? And we're just making a loop. You know. So they're feeling the boat presence, and they're feeling the pings, and several of their buddies have already got sore lips, and 3 of them's in the live well already. But we just need one good fish, and it's down there. So we stuck there. We stayed there for like 2 hours. Yeah. And it didn't happen.
Did the other guys vacate?
No, one of them went around the corner, and then another one went around the corner. They were still, we couldn't see them, but I guarantee as soon as we fired up that motor and they heard the pitch of that motor, they were on their way over there. So that there's like that little voice in your head. It's like, how long are you going to sit here and watch these fish just deny your baits? But here's the thing. It's a small lake. And I had 2 other spots that were holding fish too. Yeah. But I know good and well that those fish had already been fished multiple times. And if I run, we're in John boats, so we're running like 15 miles an hour. So it's taking a long time to get down there. So am I going to make a 15-minute run and there's somebody sitting on the spot that I want to sit on?
And then you lost your spot.
Right. Or if there is nobody there, did somebody just leave there 2 minutes prior and beat those fish up? And, we're going to be in the same situation that we were that from where we left. And those fish may not even be there. It's kind of one of those places where I hadn't really checked it in a while. They just kind of live in that area. You just kind of go there, and when you need some fish, they should be there, but they're not always there. They spread out. You know what I'm talking about? They're not always there. You gotta have the right wind. It's one of those areas that
they don't set up unless it's right.
The wind's got to be just right blowing there, and the shad got to be just right too. It's kind of a 50-50 deal. Half the time it's going on, but if it ain't right, they're not there. They're all spread out, and good luck. You can't.
And
you can't
the lake has zero current besides wind.
Right. It's just a wind thing.
So
we were sitting there, we stuck with it for a couple hours, and finally we decided, well, let's go check these spots. We ran down there. Those fish were not there. They were gone. They were gone. I'd actually I'd went down there the day before, and they were there. They were not there the day of the tournament, which is typical. So we run all the way back, and there is no place to fish. There's boats on every single point. Everybody kind of starts working their way back towards the marina or where you put in at as the day wears on.
So what he's saying is, if you really don't know a lake, go over there on a Wednesday nighter, and you can find every school of fish on the lake. In about 5 minutes.
I don't know where I was going with that, but I think I was going about that. If people could, in an ideal situation, people could leave that school and come back in 45 minutes and let it rest. But sometimes you can't, because somebody else is just going to come in there and keep it busted up. Because those first couple casts, we had, within 10 minutes, we had, 3 fish in the boat. And then they started getting a little bit funky and it slowed down. But if we would have left and come back 45 minutes later and nobody would have touched them, I think we could have caught a couple more right off the bat, and then they would have got kind of spooked again. So
if that was a Wednesday 3 weeks ago, they're already out. They're already doing their thing out there. Nobody else is on the lake, and you go out there and you fish it. You can go run down that other school, check that school, run and check another school, and come back 45 minutes later. That school is regrouped a little bit. Nobody's messed with them. Everything's back to normal. You make that first cast in there, and boom, you light them up again.
That's why, like in the tournament, in a bigger tournament, your boat number is so important a lot of times.
It can play a main factor. And, the interesting dynamic is kind of a double-edged sword, because traditionally these offshore fish, and we talk about TVA because it's right here, and that's what you think of traditionally when you talk offshore schools, but really it's not a TVA thing. It's really almost all offshore lakes. Florida and Texas can be a little different at times of the year, but for the most part, later in the day is when, say, from 10 o'clock, maybe even really 11 o'clock on till dark, or about 30 minutes prior to dark, is when those offshore schools really group up and they get together. And so it's kind of this, like, you want to get to your best school, but at the same time, it's almost more beneficial oftentimes to be in a later flight, one of the last boats. You may have somebody fish that school all day, but the last 30 minutes or an hour is when things get right and the group gets together and you can really catch them. So it's kind of you don't know. It all just depends. I'll tell you, going back to like a similar story to what you were talking about with your tournament on that small lake. We had a series of small lakes in Lexington here, pretty close to me. So like Beach Lake and Piney and Pin Oak, and there's a bunch of them down there. And they have a spring, I think they call it the Spring Classic or something. My old fishing partner, Monty, and I at Mallard Estates, fished it several years there. And we had the first year we won it, we had a really good bag, high 20s, something like that. The second year, I want to say we won that one too. And I want to say it was the third year, everybody kind of caught on. Like, everybody kind of knew what we were doing, or we'd been seen, and it's kind of hard to hide on those small lakes. The cool thing about that one is the tournament got so big that they had to put it on multiple little lakes, because there were just so many boats. You couldn't do it all on one. So you could fish like 3 different lakes. But after the third year or second year, by the third one, everybody kind of knew what was happening. And so we did the exact same thing. We were very fortunate to get the area, the little school that we wanted to get. And we caught 2 or 3, exactly what you're talking about. You could see the whole school of them break apart, and they were all just kind of individual, singles scattered up there. And I told Monty, I'm like, same deal. Everybody's around you, and they've already watched us catch several good ones.
Yeah,
so
right.
We made the decision, and I'll be honest with you, Monty's the one that really kind of pushed me to do it. I can't sit still, but we backed up about 40 yards from them, 50 yards from them, like just far enough where you couldn't make a good cast in them. And again, we had to pretend like we were still fishing because we knew if anybody just saw us standing there, they'd start easing in. So we literally casted out in the middle of no man's land for like an hour. And after an hour, we eased back up there. And sure enough, about half of them had gotten grouped up. We caught 2, 1 apiece on our first cast. We broke back up. We'd back up, get on the same exact waypoint, just spotlight, sit there and cast, just drag a worm. And maybe you get a bite out there, but honestly, we were just killing time, making everybody think we were sitting on that same exact spot when in reality, we were backing up just far enough away where everybody around thought we were on them, but the fish had enough space to kind of feel comfortable and they weren't seeing any baits. That's the biggest thing. It seems like once these schools get in a negative mood, as long as you continue to show them a bait, they don't ever really seem to get back right. If you can back away from them and just let them not see a bait for a period of time, and it's cool. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Sometimes it's the next day. Like you don't know, but oftentimes the longer you give them without seeing anything, without hearing your boat slap and all that, the better your odds of them kind of getting grouped back up. And I don't think we won that one. I think that was the year we finished second, but every one of them came off of that spot. And it would be for the rest of the day, you would slide up there and you would catch one on your first cast. You wouldn't catch one, but it was the most mind numbing. Like we spent 7/8 of that entire tournament day casting in the middle of mud in 20 foot of water, like where we knew we weren't going to get a bite. So it was so weird. Like,
well, you can do that on the TVA.
Any like strategy that I have of fishing.
I like that.
You can do that on the TVA though, real quick. And if somebody's drawing to you, you can just start drifting a little bit and you be off the spot by 30, 40, 50, 60 yards, 100 yards. And they don't have a clue that you're off that spot.
Absolutely.
Unless they got some sort of reference point out there, whether it's a buoy marker or something like that, like or channel marker, excuse me. They don't know that they just think you lost them or you're just not catching them.
Well, you can't tell when you're looking from a quarter mile away how close the boat is to
exactly. So that's a cool little tidbit.
I like that, man. I like that.
We didn't win that one, but we certainly caught the first 2 or 3 were easy, like you said. I mean, you were going to catch those, but every fish we caught after those initial like 3 or 4, we caught by sneaking up there, making a
pro
cast,
tip, bro. That's a pro tip.
Back, let them regroup. So it's kind of cool.
You're gonna watch everybody in the Wednesday nighters like easing off.
Exactly. No. It's those it's days like that keep me hungry. Like, I don't know that I would have ever done that. I mean, Monty kind of forced me to do that for a little while, and then it started working. So of course we keep doing it. But the little extra, things like that. Again, we're all so good. It's all about getting that extra good bite, and it's cool things like that you can figure out that, at this point, I'm always there to learn, I'm always trying to learn, but it's kind of more difficult at this point. I guess you're learning in smaller increments.
Right.
Because you've built up a fairly solid knowledge base. Again, don't know it all, still got a lot to learn, but it is on a day-to-day basis, it's harder to come home and go, okay, we learned this, and this, and this today. It's, it's more smaller, little minute things that you pick up. But that was really rewarding. And I haven't ever used that strategy since. I really haven't had that situation, but I'll definitely try it the next time that I'm in that scenario where that kind of, seems to play.
It takes a lot of discipline to do it. It takes a lot, especially on the closer it gets to time to weigh in and you're not where you need to be, it's harder. Right. It's harder to hold your ground.
Again, we knew, I don't remember, we had like a low 20s or something. We had a decent bag, but it always takes a really good bag to win that tournament. It's so hard to sit there throwing a worm and You pick up an Alabama rig or something, but most of the time I just drag a worm because it was easier on me. I didn't feel like I was going to get a bite anyway, you know. But it's so hard knowing you're 1 or 2 bites away, yet I'm sitting out here throwing in no man's land, like where I'm not going to catch one. But just like you, when I know that the ones to win are sitting right there, it's hard to, like, what are my odds of moving around anywhere else in this lake and finding that group or a couple fish that are the right ones? And when you know they're sitting right there, it's hard to leave them when you know you're not going to get back on them.
Yeah, we made that run to that other spot where the fish were gone, and then we came back, and there was 2 boats right where we had just and they'd probably been there within 2 or 3 minutes of us leaving. You know, we ended up doing all right, but we had to totally change patterns and go to a different spot.
Correct.
Something I wanted to talk about, and you kind of mentioned it a while ago, is you know, everybody talks about time on the water, how important time on the water is. And I agree, there's no substitute for time on the water. But I think that there's also something to be said for like proper time on the water, proper practice, like focused practice, going out there with an intention of looking for certain specific things and just taking advantage of that limited amount of time that we do have on the water. Talk a little bit about that, because you go to different lakes, you know, fishing the Invitationals, fishing the Toyota Series, hopefully the BPT next year. You're going to have a limited amount of practice, and the more you do this, the more you're going to encounter lakes that you have not been on before, or you're going to run into some bodies of water, you know, tidal type stuff, or, you know, cypress tree lakes or whatever it is. You're going to run into some stuff that's might be a little bit different. Maybe you do a lot of map studying and stuff, and you go to those places and, well, maybe it don't look like what you thought. So you've got a couple days to figure it out. And that's where I think, you know, practice is so important. So talk about kind of how you tackle a lake with a limited amount of time and how important practice is.
Yeah. And I think, and remind me of this, Clint Knight has a great question that said, after fishing Kentucky Lake for so many years, how much did that prepare you to fish all across the country?
Question,
that goes right along with what you're saying. And don't let me forget that, because this is kind of could be somewhat of a long answer. But, you know, I've always been so driven, like when it comes, and I've always been a driven person with everything that I do. Like I'm always going to put 110% into. Like if the 3 of us sit down to eat, I'm going to eat, but I'm going to get done before y'all. Like it's just the way I'm going to get to the car faster. Like it's whatever it is, I want to be the best at it. So
I don't know, man.
I don't.
We'll have to take that challenge sometime.
I'll take you up on that one.
Especially ice cream. I can eat ice cream fast.
Ooh, I like to enjoy my ice cream, but you get me on like a extra large pizza, no chance you can beat me.
Put a double cheeseburger in front of me, brother, and I got you down. I get that comment all the time. Do you even taste it? And I said, no, like,
I've gotten that.
It's only for nutrition. That's it. Like,
that's right.
100% to fill me up and move on. Like, eating is just a formality.
That's right. Exactly. But yeah, you know, I've always been super motivated to. I've always known or always felt like I was, you know, one step away from really figuring it all out, or for the whole puzzle to kind of fall into place, so to speak. And I use that cliche term, but it's hard to really put it into words any other way, you know, as far as a pattern or a lake, all kind of what I mean by that is everything about that particular lake after I've spent a period of time on it will start to make sense. When I pull into a new area, a new bay, a new pocket, a new drain, whatever it may be, it all makes sense as to where the fish are going to be, why they're there. And there's so many answers to that. And there's not one good one by any means. But I've always been, I guess, to a fault to some degree, like I can't go fun fishing. I do. But it ultimately, like, I'm fishing just as hard as if I'm fishing in Redcrest or the Bassmaster Classic, or like every day is the same, regardless of whether me and one of my old college roommates are going out, you know, first time in 5 or 10 years, or again, I'm fishing one of the biggest tournaments of my life. Like I prepare exactly the same way. I fish this with the same intensity. It's hard for me to just go fishing and enjoy it. And like, I'm really having to learn with my 2 boys of it's hard for me to go fishing with them. And please don't take this the wrong way, because I enjoy every minute that I
know what you're
have.
saying.
But it's like I have to remind myself out there, like I get frustrated because I'm like, golly, I think I could have been 500 yards further down this bar. I've had to untangle this and undo this. And like I get frustrated because I'm like still in that, I don't want to say tournament mode, but I'm just used to like going 100 miles an hour and covering and doing this and doing that. And I get frustrated, and I just kind of have to, I've done this, like walk to the back of the boat, take a deep breath. Like, this is for fun. Let's enjoy the day. You know, this is not who catches the most or the biggest bag. And it's hard for me to do that, but I feel very lucky to be like naturally driven that way, because I feel like I stay in that mode all the time, and it keeps me learning. Like I'm always pushing myself. I'm always trying to, even on those days when I've got the boys out there, like I'm trying to do it the very best, I guess. And to kind of get back to your question, it's and Clint's question, you know, Kentucky Lake has been a tremendous, you know, learning ground or place for me to kind of dabble my feet in all things bass fishing. And it's, the whole TVA system is really an interesting lake or system, in that it's very versatile. You can, different times of the year, offer a lot of different ways to catch them. And that's something that I'm learning in traveling to these new lakes, you know, and lakes that I haven't been to before. You get there for a week and you realize, like, a lot of the fish do one thing, or maybe not all year, but again, on any given week on any TVA system, there's usually like 2 or 3 ways to win a tournament. It's 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways, whether it be patterns or techniques or even more, that you can catch them with, you know, with. And like you go to West Point, for instance, like, whoa, there were only about 2 or 3 different ways you could catch them, and you could do a lot of other things and never get a bite, you know. And there are a lot of ways, or a lot of lakes that fish in that way, and the TVA is just not built that way. It's very diverse. Even like you look at Kentucky Lake right here out in front of Paris, say from Paris to Blood River fishes kind of a certain way. You go north of Blood all the way to the dam, it kind of fishes its own way. And again, you go south of really like Danville Bridge, it gets real shallow, it gets riverine. There's so many things that are here. You know, if I want to go shallow cranking and throwing a topwater and trying to figure out what river fish do in the summer, like I can go put in down there at you know, Saltillo or even at you know, Paraval, and go do that. And in the very next day, or even in the same day, I can load my boat up and put in at Ken Lake and go fish really deep, where, you know, a lot of those fish are 20, 25, even 30 feet deep. So it's been a great, you know, opportunity, and I'm super fortunate to have Kentucky Lake and the TVA chain right here, you know, kind of in our backyard, and to be able to learn from, because it really has. I can take every lake that we've been to this year, and really everywhere I've been, I can take certain scenarios and things that I've seen there and correlate it right back here to home. And you can't always do that with a lot of lakes. You look at guys that are, you know, from Florida or Louisiana, you know, those kind of lowland, swampy areas, a lot of vegetation. The fish all kind of, they're doing one thing there. It's hard to learn offshore fishing down there. And so it's certainly helped me. It's made me more versatile, more comfortable when I go to new lakes. You know, I'm not saying that I'm the best at everything, but I've had an opportunity to dabble in most every technique or, you know, pattern out there. And that certainly helped me to be able to get to these lakes, much like what you were talking about. And in 3 days, which is quite a bit of time, but on a new body of water to kind of break it down and figure out what those fish are doing and what the winning fish are doing, it helps to have that experience and kind of that background. You run around the corner and see an isolated boat dock in a pocket. You know, if there's a largemouth around here in March or April, like he's probably going to be slid up under that black float, you know, getting warm, or whatever that scenario may be. I've seen it before. I've done it. Again, maybe not to the best of, you know, you take a an Andy Morgan or an Andy Montgomery, a Brian Trieve. Those guys have fished a zillion boat docks. I promise you they can put their jig in a place that I cannot. But I've done it. I've done it enough to be, comfortable. And honestly, it's been a lot of fun. There's been a few of these tournaments this week that I was familiar and somewhat comfortable, but felt like I was a lot better angler at that technique or that pattern, at the end of that week. And that's always successful to me. Wherever you finish in the standings, if I can walk away from a week or even a single day tournament, having learned something, to move forward and utilize for the next one, I always consider that a success.
Yeah, I've fished with guys that on Kentucky Lake, a ledge lake, where they're offshore fishermen. They are offshore fishermen. They got a Carolina rig, whatever they have. They're used to just casting out in open water. They're not really target casting. They're casting at a blue dot or they're casting at a bar or something like that. You get them in close to the bank around cover, and they're not that good at putting their little stuff where it needs to be. So
that was always evident in regionals, right?
Oh, yeah,
as a co-angler,
which was good for me. It benefited me quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I'm seeing, man, you just left that there. You left that there. You left that there. I'm sliding my little jig or my shaky head up there, and it paid off quite a bit.
I remember Chickamauga coming from grass fishing and getting on the boat with a TVA guy, Kentucky Lake guy that hasn't seen grass. Even though that Chickamauga was a TVA lake, but they don't have grass on Kentucky.
Right.
They used to.
But not like what we're used to. You go to Chick and it's 4 miles of grass on one stretch.
Right.
And they're like, what do you do? It's like, well, this is easy. This stuff is easy.
Well, but I make sure with me personally, and the YouTube channel really helps this to try to keep a variety of catching fish different ways with different baits, which is something I really try to do. I try to not do the same video over and over, but I make sure that if I'm fishing offshore for, a couple videos or something, I want to go to a lake, or if it's possible on that lake that has wood cover and lay downs and stuff where I can pitch and flip and make sure I don't, it is like riding a bike. But back to what you're saying, you do a technique for a couple of days and you get dialed in on it. You can slide that jig up there where you need to do it. But if you've been out there in open water for weeks and weeks, that first couple hours you slide in and start fishing.
Off of a pontoon boat.
Yeah, you're going to get some blow ups and you're going to get some backlashes and you're not going to look like you've ever done it before. But so I make sure that I try to go, back and forth and
you're exactly right. You hit a great point, and it's something that I try to remind everyone as much as I can. It certainly, or especially some of the younger age group, call it, and not that I'm putting anybody on the spot, but call it 25 and younger. And the only reason that I put that number on there is that, live scope's been around, forward facing's been around for roughly 4 or 5 years now, and what we're starting to see is a lot of the younger guys that are and girls that are just getting into it lean very, very heavily on forward facing, and it's great, and it's 100% of the way most every tournament's going to be won. I mean, it's reality of it, but at the same time, it's no different than if we've got any golfers listening. If you get busy with work or get busy with a family, go on vacation, don't bring your clubs, and you don't play for a couple weeks, and you go out there, you're probably going to hit the ball clean, probably as clean as you've hit it in a while, but your feel is off. Your short game, that 100 and inside is off because that muscle memory is you lean on so much. And we do the very same thing in fishing, with our little sidearm cast and just being able to put our bait, that hand-eye coordination of being able to put our bait, wherever it needs to be. And I encourage everyone to, just as you said, even if it's maybe not in a practice or a tournament scenario, but just out fun fishing, even if it's not the pattern to go do, go up there, turn that thing off, go up there and skip a jig around, go throw a frog, stay current with all that. Keep your, your wedge game strong, so to speak, and keep that feel, keep it fluent to you, because there are going to be tournaments or a tournament at some point where we've got high muddy water, and this is not going to play, as well. There's going to be a time where they're all under boat docks, and you're still going to be able to utilize forward-facing sonar, just as we saw Drew do it at Eufaula, Oklahoma, in the BPT, and probably several others. But you still got to be able to get your bait to that fish, and we're all getting so comfortable and so fluent with hitting this imaginary line out here, this, kind of imaginary crosshair at 75 feet at 115, on the clock, that we're forgetting how fluent we need to stay up there. And I try to do that. I'm staying so busy, I'm not getting as much time to play and kind of fun fish as much as I want, but very same thing of what you're talking about. Like I have several smaller lakes, within an hour's drive of here that may not be the thing. I mean, I probably can go catch a bigger bag out behind me, out there scoping, but I'm going to spend a couple days up there shallow, putting my bait quietly, precisely where it needs to be. And again, just staying comfortable, staying fluent. Man, I've done it a few times this year where I go up there and practice, and thank goodness it's been in practice and not on live, where I've had to go up there and, man, for at least the first hour, I look like a fool. I mean, it takes you a minute. Like, yeah. Dude, I can hit a bass behind the motor, like over my back almost at 92 feet. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, I'll be within, its strike zone. But you try to let me get up there for the first minute or two when I haven't done it in a while, up shallow and skipping and getting it where it needs to be. It's a struggle. And the longer that you go without doing that,
we lost him. He's back.
And so I encourage everyone to even if it's a couple hours during a day, if we only have 1 or 2 days during the weekend, our days off to go fish, we obviously want to go catch as much as we want to. But even if you can stay fluent with it, go up there for an hour every day that you get a chance to go out. And just stay current with all that. It'll help a whole lot when you get put in that situation. It just won't be so uncomfortable to you, unfamiliar.
I tell you, the one thing that was an eye-opener for me was when we were fishing Kentucky Lake, and some of those mussels that you don't use, throwing baits that you don't typically throw, like a big topwater, and you throw it for 9 hours.
Topwater break you down, man.
And then the next day, you qualify for second day in that super tournament down there. And you're still throwing a topwater, and you haven't thrown a topwater but 9 hours the day before. And that first 4 twitches that morning, and the forearm locks up, and it doesn't twitch anymore. It just comes in straight.
I love when you can physically see your muscle. Quickly.
Yeah.
Like you can't get it to stop.
I get like that when I'm punching. If I'm on a punching bite for 6 or 8 hours and I'm throwing an ounce and a half weight,
that's the benefit of being able to do ambidextrous, being able to punch with both hands.
And that's something else that's something I was getting ready to talk about. Is something I've been working on, me personally, and I suggest everybody out there, if you're just looking to challenge yourself, and I'm sure many people on there already know how to do this, but is casting left-handed. Yep. And even go a step further, and you can get some left-handed reels. I mean, I fish. It's I know it's weird. Well, I fish with spinning
it's like reeling a pencil sharpener backwards.
I fish with a spinning rod that way, but I can't. It's weird when I do a bait caster. But I've been working on.
I don't understand that. How is it okay for one reel? I can totally understand. We had this argument up in New York. Do you spin? Is your spinning reel on the? So I'm kind of weird. I'm really ambidextrous. However, I cannot reel left-handed. Everything else I can do with both hands. I can pretty well write with both hands. Not great. I'm left-handed. However, my kindergarten teacher taught me to write with my right hand, which was a huge ordeal back in the day, but it was a great asset and has been ever since, because it's made me, so I'm left-handed, I'm dominant left-handed, but anytime that, you learn to write, any fine, thing, finite thing, screwing in anything, I eat right-handed, so a lot of, I use both hands for a lot of things. And
that's why he can beat us in a pizza eating contest, because he just
guarantee it. Absolutely, man. We keep talking about pizza. Y'all gonna make me order one. I haven't eaten dinner yet. But back in my junior club days, we would, we're fishing real foot and a lot of small bodies of water. A lot of the boat captains had aluminum boats, so they were, smaller, tighter. And we've got 3 people in the boat. We've got, a junior in the front and a junior in the back and a poor boat captain in the middle trying
with a helmet and a face mask on.
Absolutely. And so I actually learned to cast right and left-handed. There at Real Foot, we've got a lot of cypress trees, and it's easy if you're left-handed. It's easy to make that little roll cast to the left side of the tree. However, left-handed, it's hard to make your bait go in and around the right side of the tree. So between having that boat captain kind of always in the way right back there and fishing cypress trees, I actually learned at an early age to cast both right and left-handed. However, I cannot reel left-handed. I just can't get over that. But
even
how
with a spinning reel?
Y'all comment, fill me in on this. How is it that y'all switch hands with your bait casters and your spinning reels, and every one of you says it's perfectly natural for me to reel with my left hand for a spinning reel, but feels totally weird for a bait casting reel? This motion is exactly the same whether your reel is upside down or top side. Like, how is that different? And everybody says it.
So for me, it's the hook set. It's the reeling is awkward at first, but it's the hook set.
That's me. I can't do any, like.
Don't make that motion on camera. We'll get canceled.
With my right hand.
Yeah. I can't set the hook. I can't palm a reel and set with my right hand.
I got you. Yeah.
It just doesn't. It feels like it's going to fall out.
It just doesn't feel right.
Yeah, but
but that's what everybody that I hear that's right-handed uses a spinning reel in the left side, but swears up and down that a bait casting reel feels so weird to them on the left side. I'm like, it's the same process. We're just reeling under the rod instead of over. I don't.
Well, so
I know.
My college partner he used left-handed reels.
Yep.
Okay. Which are hard to find anyway. If you want to find a quality reel left-handed, that's especially 15 years ago, that was even more difficult.
Right.
But worked out really, really well for us when we were going down the bank. Like, he goes one way, I go the other way, and it all works out. But his deal was no one taught him how to fish. He was all self-taught. Yeah. And it just makes more sense to reel on this side. If I'm going to cast with this hand, I'm going to reel with this hand.
Yep.
Yeah.
I understand that, but we were taught with a right-handed Abu Garcia 521 that was right-handed. The dad handed me. Like,
and I think that's what a lot of it has to do with. Like, if you're
how many left-handed Zepcos are there?
Left-handed spinning reel thing got started, and so when you grow up, whoever you're fishing around has most of the time got their spinning reel on the left hand, the left side, and everybody just grows up doing it that way, so it feels natural to them, I guess. I don't know. I'm fortunate. I predominantly use my left and reel with my right just so I don't have to swap for the very same reason. But I can use both, casting wise.
I think you just nailed it.
How many Zepcos are left-handed?
Yeah, we start with the 202 or whatever.
That's true.
As a kid, when you're 3, 4, 5 years old, that's what you're learning, and that's what sticks in your head when you're soaking all that stuff up like a sponge. So that's probably it right there.
It is. It's probably right.
They need to come out with left-handed 202s. I mean, that's the way we can combat this and get these next generation of fishermen more ambidextrous.
So
it's a big word.
I just got to know, you fish Reelfoot years ago as a junior. Was it a 5.6 or a 6-foot pistol grip?
Ooh. So I started with, let's see, the first tournament I think they made me wait until I was 10 to get in. I think I still had the little bitty one. It was 5-something.
It was a pistol grip, though, wasn't it?
I have it. The crazy thing is, like, I bet I still have it somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't get rid of any rods or anything like that. But yes, I remember. I think I was like 11 or 12 when I went to that like 6.5-foot pistol grip, and boy, did I think I was hot stuff.
Oh yeah,
you could bomb it out there.
Of course, the split grips came out, and we all started doing that. And like, I don't even know how I used to do that, and how anybody used to cast with like little bitty pistol grip. My wrist is, I'm not strong enough to do that. I watch guys cast one-handed all the time. I'm like, how in the world? How do you do that?
Try going to set the hook with
that
one.
Much force into it, but
go set the hook with one.
Leverage.
I don't need to do that.
I'd break everything in my hand.
Yeah, man. That's the cool thing about real foot. It's so easy down there. You can go down there with about 3 poles and catch them pretty well year round. Like you need a big spinner bait, you need something to flip, and a frog, and that'll pretty well cover you. And like back then, I pretty well threw that spinner bait. Man, you could make a little short, almost kind of pitching that spinner bait around those trees, and when one would eat it, you just kind of load up on him, you know.
Like a horseshoe.
It was fun. I actually went over there. Probably shouldn't tell everybody this. A couple of my buddies will be upset, but I actually went over there to Reelfoot for the first time bass fishing in probably like 10 years. Last week before, had a good buddy of mine, Ben Parker, wanted me to dial in his live scope, and I actually caught some big ones scoping out there on some stuff. So that was kind of new school in an old environment. It was a lot of fun, but.
Yeah, I have yet to fish there
and film, and I mean, not that anybody wants to film another forward-facing video, but like, it was pretty silly. We could have caught them big time. We weren't out there very long. It was pretty good.
Did you take your big boat down there, or did you have a?
No. We were in his boat, get his stuff dialed in. You can in the springtime, you can, if you know the lake, you can get around fairly decent. You know, the water level is usually up in March and April, and you can get around with some decency. You're still going to run into one at some point, but like you're not going to tear anything up crazy. But by this time of year, or even really by middle of May, I don't know that I'd put one in there.
You have jet, don't you? They got jet.
Not really. No, it's more, honestly, a lot of guys use those pro drives, like
okay.
The mud motors there. The jet drives are good, and I don't know much about the jet drives, but I think one problem that we would have there is there's a lot of, like, I think it's coontail. It's what it looks like. It's really just started to grow back in the last year or so, but it's getting thick in a lot of areas, and I don't know how well that jet drive would hold up with all that. Like, it seems like it would get gummed up and kind of mess you up there. But
I would imagine
everybody's using a pro drive mud boat, or, again, let's call it a 90 horse or under. You can get around pretty easy in an aluminum boat. Like, there's pretty good trails marked. You need to know where you're going, but you can get around. It's a hidden gem. It really is. It's any natural lake fishes somewhat frustrating. It's frustrating to me because when you get to a new natural body of water, it all looks the same. There's usually a lot of vegetation, whether it's submergent or emergent, but it's all very flat. There's not a lot of change, and everything is pretty well the same. Like Reelfoot, you've got pads, seed moss, shallow trees, deep trees, duck blinds, or stumps and logs. Like, that's pretty well it, and that's really actually more than what I thought I was going to say, but it
probably a pretty consistent depth across the entire lake.
It doesn't change in consistency, like hard to soft. There's not much depth change. When you put your boat in Reelfoot and you open up out there into Kirby's Pocket and you go, holy cow, like, where in all these pads do I start, and where in the 7 million trees would a bass might be? Because it all looks fishy. You'll learn over time, just as any local on any natural lake. There are certain areas and certain zones, and they're all for different reasons, but there are areas that just naturally, like, fish just tend to live there. And it can be difficult because even when you find those areas, you don't always know why it is. It's just, man, I don't know, like those 4 or 5 trees. Like, I can take you to Reelfoot and we might pull into a patch of 200 trees, and I'll tell you, you need to fish that one, those 2, and those 10 down there. We're not going to worry about all the rest of them. I don't know why those 2 and this one and those 10 are the best ones, but that's just where you always get a bite.
It sounds like the metal wrapped tree pattern that you and I have.
Oh, Duck Creek. Yeah, we got a lake that's it's about Oh, it's less than 2,000 acres. It's full of vegetation pads. It's got some cypress trees out in the middle of it, and
it's 8 foot all the way across the whole lake.
It's got a channel. Well, it does have a channel around. Once you get out of the channel, it's the same. But there are certain trees that hold fish, and there's certain trees that have metal around them to keep the snakes from crawling up them.
I think it's the beavers.
Is it beavers?
Beavers keep the
beavers from chewing on them. So,
Yep.
But anyway, there's certain times where they get on those for whatever, or they get on the doubles and the triples or something. There's some that
doubles
or the one that's way out there just a little bit further.
Or the one that's leaning. That's my favorite.
Yeah, exactly.
You got
a lot of
just for everybody out there. Anytime that you get in, again, a lot of times you're going to see it on natural bodies of water, but it doesn't always have to be. When you get in a vast expanse of the same piece of cover, whether it's cypress trees, boat docks, grass, lily pads, whatever it is, when you look out across a vast area and it's all pretty well the same stuff out there, you're looking for irregularities. It's generally what they're going to key on. It could be a hard spot inside of there. It could be an open hole. It could be a clump. If it's a boat dock, it could be the boat dock that's, got the longest walkway, that's the furthest out. It could be the most isolated, the one by itself. Like there's always a reason, even in areas that have isolated cover, that we're not talking about here. There is always a reason why that fish was where he was. And I say fish because I'm not talking just specifically bass. Like it's every species is going to be that way. So sometimes on these natural lakes, again, it's more difficult to decipher because you're generally not given as much information. Like there's not a big giant secondary point and a laydown on the very tip of it. Like super obvious. Okay, this makes sense. But when you get into these vast areas, I'll oftentimes take the most obvious irregularity and work my way to kind of the smallest irregularity, because again, that's the change out there. Whatever is different is oftentimes there's fish that are going to be scattered all throughout that area, but to find a group or, several fish in one area, it's usually on something like that, or, a pattern to, even if it's individuals, they'll all be on one isolated clump out away from itself. There's always something to it. And it will oftentimes speed that learning curve up of where, finding these fish and figuring out what they're doing. And instead of taking a huge grass mat that runs, 3 miles long and just say, all right, I'm going to start on this end, I'm going to fish to the end, which again, sometimes that's what you have to do. But oftentimes what I'll do is I'll run down that irregularity on plane and actually just drop a dot every time I see something that's different along there. And I'll actually run back to where I started and just hopscotch from every waypoint that I made down through there. And again, when I first get to a lake or into a new area that I don't really understand or don't know what they're doing, by doing that, by marking the high percentage places and not fishing all those long straight stretches in between, I'll oftentimes figure out what the pattern within the pattern. It's never, I shouldn't say never, that's a long time, but very rarely is it, yeah, man, I was just catching them in grass in like 7 foot of water. And it didn't matter if it was on a point or a straight stretch or a scattered patches or, yeah, I was just catching them along this stretch. Like most of the time, there is a pattern within the pattern. You can fish a half a mile down the stretch and you get to an isolated clump out by itself, and that's where he is. Well, once I realized that, I don't want to waste another hour to get to another isolated patch. Like I just want to run from patch to patch to patch. And so the quicker that you dial that in and establish what it is that they're living on, and again, by me knowing that they're most of the time on some sort of irregularity, if I just zip down through there and hit those first, you can oftentimes kind of break it down in a lot more manageable time span. And it's helped me a lot. Like, St. Clair, it's going to be the very same thing. Like, if you can find an open hole out there in that massive, giant flat, or maybe it's a place where the grass is growing taller, or a different type of grass. Like there's so many different things that it is, but the most important thing to realize is that it's always change, regardless of whatever, it exactly is in that particular scenario. It's usually going to be some sort of change. So that's always what I'm looking for. There's just a multitude of different changes out there that they can live on.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. That's really solid advice, and that ties into being more efficient out on the water too.
It does.
We often get caught up going down that whole bank because it looks so good. There's got to be efficient here somewhere. Well,
and look, the cool thing about that is when you find something along that straight stretch, you have it to yourself.
That's true.
I mean, a lot of guys have figured out that those scattered patches out there were the deal. It just took them much longer to figure it out than it did for me, because I just ran straight down through there and started on those, or I very quickly got to them. Whereas maybe you, again, not in particular, but just as an example, said, man, I'm just going to start and I'm going to go. Well, it took you 3 hours to get to the first scattered little clump, or maybe it's a little indention in the grass, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But just it took you a long time to get to that first change. Whereas I'm looking for that, from the get-go.
And if there's 15 scattered clumps along that 3 mile stretch, let's just say hypothetically, and there's only fish in 10 of them, and that first 2 that you come through after you've been going down that mat for a half a mile don't have fish in it, you got no confidence.
Right.
If you spent your time hitting all 15 of them and you hit gold on 10 of them, you're like, okay, let's go find some more of these. Let's not worry about that 3 mile stretch of grass.
It's just hard to change our mindset on that, because you're not fishing, you're running, but you truly are fishing because you're fishing
that's the smart practice and being fishing on time on the water that we were talking about. That ties
this
right
whole back into it, where you're looking for, let's be honest, we're looking for dumb fish, right? I don't want to try to go.
I'm not good at catching smart ones.
No, those are hard to catch, right?
Aggressive fish.
I want to catch the dumb aggressive ones that in a high percentage area that I can find a bunch of those areas.
Right.
So now I got high percentage areas with a bunch of dumb fish in it that I'm going to catch a lot. And I'm like you at the beginning of this, we started talking, like, it doesn't matter if I'm fishing a tournament or if I'm just going out on a Tuesday night fishing. Like, I just want to catch one, and I want to feel that tug and that thump. Yep. Right?
Exactly.
And that's what we all live for. That's the drug.
Do it now.
That's the drug that they're selling us, right?
Yep. Absolutely. And that's, again, whether you're a weekend angler that just wants to take your son or granddaughter out, fishing, and we're even talking for bluegill. Like, it pretty well all goes with about every species. We could dive into some that don't matter, but for the most part, whatever you're going to be fishing for, it's going to relate around some sort of change. You just have to figure out what that change is, and the faster that you find it gives you the more time to find whether it's more of that particular change, or at a certain point, and there's never like it's a feeling, it's an instinct, like an instinctual kind of gut feeling to me at some point in practice or even in tournament, when I go, okay, I've got a good enough understanding of this pattern, whatever that may be, that I'm confident that either I know I can catch what I need to doing this, or, I know I can run around the lake and not even have to practice it and just kind of run that particular pattern and catch them. At some point, I really like to say, okay, I know I can do this. Let's go figure out something else. It may not be the thing to go do, but if this fails, if this, the conditions don't set up or aren't as conducive in the tournament as it was in practice, or again, there's so many outside variables that go into this. And again, whether you're talking a tournament day or just out, fun fishing, I'll at some point back up and not continue with that pattern. Like, I'll try to go find something else or a secondary, even if, again, if I know the majority of the population is living offshore in 15 to 22 feet of water, and I've got several schools and I understand how to make them bite, I may go look at boat docks, or I may go try to find a topwater bite or a shad spawn, bite early in the morning. Or even if I know this is not the majority of the population, but I can get a good understanding of what everything else is doing, then if that's not working, I've got a starting point. I've got something to go to. And so much of this is just about making decisions and really, he who wins the tournament oftentimes is the person that kept his bait in the strike zone the longest. Again, the most efficient for that particular day. And so being able to make that call and that decision quicker or with more of an educated, background, the better your decision making is going to be. And so it all kind of ties in. It's, again, there's so many factors to this, and it's what keeps it so much fun to me. And you never can learn enough or kind of have it all, dialed in per se. But it's, I don't know. I've kind of I think I've hacked into a way to be extremely efficient this year. And again, whether we're talking finding them or actually being able to catch them and get them in the boat, it's really been fun tweaking and learning new little, again, it's the little stuff now that I'm learning that honestly take you a lot further than what some of the bigger aspects of fishing did when I learned them. But it's those little minute things, I imagine like what Dale Earnhardt would do. And I'm not certainly by any means comparing myself to him, but just the first person that came to mind that was ultra competitive. He never turned that switch off. Like it was, he may be sitting there working with media, and he may be, signing autographs and working with fans, but you can see his mind working. Like he's watching that whoever, in the background working on his car and seeing what he's doing. And, he goes back after a long race week and he's not hanging out with the family. He's working on his car and figuring out a new way to do this or that. I'm not into cars, so I don't know much about it, but Earnhardt always had that kind of that vibe that like he was never content. He was never happy. He would win and he would still get up there. And I'm guilty of doing this. Of like, man, I just wish this would have gone right. Like at Eufaula, there were several things that slipped or didn't kind of go my way that really would have made that a lot more exciting for me. And it's like, man, how can you complain? You just won $115,000, and the trophy that you've always dreamed of. And like, how can you sit back and not be happy about that? And I am, but it's just like, you're never content with what you have or what you know.
Oh yeah, we always want more. Especially, if you're a competitive person at heart, you always want more. You could have won a tournament by 7 pounds instead of 3 pounds, or
right.
I jumped that one fish off, or this and that. I think it's cool when, kind of back to where you were talking about going out and fishing with your sons and trying to not be so competitive and just actually enjoy that time on the water. I think part of that is, with me personally, is all the conditions are changing all the time. And I'm wanting to see, part of me is like, okay, I want to run as much water as I can to see what the fish are doing in these certain conditions. Because we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. There's certain spots on our local lakes that the conditions have to set up right for the fish to be feeding. And we know that. But every once in a while, I want to go look at it when the conditions aren't what I think are right, just to see if I'm right, just to check myself. It's always
you never know.
I mean, but how many times do you find a pattern? How many times do you find a pattern when you do that you didn't know about, or now you understand why they're there, or maybe you intercepted them leading up to that. Well, now you understand the whole cycle.
So the reason why I think that is very important is to know, are those morning fish, lunch fish or evening fish? Are they wind-driven fish? Are they current-driven fish? Does there have to be shad in the area? Are they feeding on bluegill? Are they, all the different variables?
Correct.
When you have so many places that you've caught fish on your home, on Kentucky Lake, you're fishing an invitational on Kentucky Lake, you got 1,000 spots, or you're fishing a Toyota Series or whatever, your mind it's hard to go past spots where you've caught fish, and everybody deals with this. But if you start figuring out, okay, this little stretch of bank, it needs a south wind blowing on it. This little stretch of bank, we need a little bit of cloud cover. A little bit of rain helps even better. These fish, they like to feed under this condition. These fish, they're not there in the morning, but start about 3, 4 o'clock, they'll kind of start creeping towards this area. So as we start learning like different behaviors and moods of certain groups of fish or just areas in our lake, we're able to run past some of those lakes without having to stop and check them. Because if you stop and check all the places you've caught fish, you may not ever catch a fish because you're checking.
I don't think I'd get constantly checking spots.
Yeah. So, so to me, that's what's cool about when I'm out there with my daughter. I'm always wanting to basically, I'm just wanting to fortify what I think I know already about my body of water, and it can be hard to to just let that go. But it's also cool when those conditions line up and you can say, hey, we're gonna go to that spot. Things haven't lined up for 3 weeks in this little area, and today's the day, and we're gonna smash it. And that's fun. I love it when that happens.
I love when the wind comes out of that right direction and that one spot that they haven't been on in 3 weeks, and it's like, all right, here we go, boys.
Yep.
Hang on.
Yeah.
You make one pass just to confirm so you don't look like an idiot. But you make one pass over them and you're like, yep, here we go.
Yep. Game over.
Brock's got a question for you. Do you guys out there's a couple people wanted to ask questions, get them on here and we'll put them out there. This is a good one from Brock. He says, if Jake was a co-angler in the BFL stuck in the back blind, how would you fish Kentucky Lake?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's any fishing question. It's all weather and time dependent. Depending on what they're doing will obviously directly affect how I'm going to target them based on their depth range, I guess is what I'm saying. But try to keep this trying to keep it more general stuff, just again because you get into specific times of the year and it's hard. But this really is kind of whether you're a co-angler or I would say that it's could be more utilized by a co-angler, but really it's every time we go fishing. Something that I always try to pay really close attention to, and I did this long before forward facing and even side imaging for that matter, is to understand where that fish was in the water column when he bit. Or where my bait was in the water column. And the reason that I say that is I see a lot of co-anglers and a lot of fishermen in general not pay enough attention to where that bite came from, what you were doing when you got that bite. Because let's face it, as a co-angler, we're not given the maximum amount of opportunities throughout a day. So we need to make every single opportunity count. And
right.
Whether that's kind of the cliche, thing of, well, I'm not going to do what my boater does. And that doesn't always work out. Sometimes it does. But again, if you will, if I'm dragging a jig behind my boater and I go to wind my jig in real fast and about halfway back to the boat, he eats it. Wait a minute. That one wasn't on the bottom. Or he was on the bottom and he'd been following my jig, dragging through there. And when I took off reeling, that's what made him react.
Right.
But to be able to utilize and understand and take as much information from that one bite to say, okay, maybe I don't need to drag this jig. Either I'm going to hop it, get it way up off the bottom, or maybe I need to throw a swim bait or a scrounger style bait, something that's up, in the water column. It's just so important to try to maximize what you're given back there. And I think one aspect of co-angling that really gets kind of forgotten is that verticalness in the water column, like that. If you're, and again, this doesn't always work, but if my co-angler, if my boater is winding a an MR12 down the bank, which we all know he's going to be grinding it on the bottom, then I'm probably at least going to start with a jerkbait or a single swimmer or something that's up in the water column. And that's going to do two things for me. For one, obviously we're going to be to some degree maybe even targeting totally separate fish, but we're both working together in trying to figure out today, are they most likely related to the bottom, which will correlate you getting more bites on that crankbait, or maybe they're even sitting on the bottom and wanting to come up a long way to your jerkbait. Again, if I start with something totally different and he's getting bit, I probably need to change. Whether it go to may not even be a crankbait, but maybe I need to get down there on the bottom. But I see a lot of co-anglers and again a lot of fishermen in general leave a lot of the water column, and I'm talking vertical in the water column, because again you're only given, say, from like the console back or maybe a little ahead of that. You fish with me, I'm cool with you throwing wherever you need to, but a lot of guys and kind of the general what's the word I'm looking for?
Unwritten rule.
Yeah. The unwritten rule would be, kind of this little zone back here. But we oftentimes forget of how many fish are living in that little zone, but from the bottom up. And so, to be able to throw something for a little while. And again, so much of this is kind of instinctual and just based on my past experiences. But if you can throw something for a little while, whether it be a bait on the bottom or a bait up in the water column, and say, okay, that's not working, or I'm getting a few bites, but I think there's more fish out here. Maybe let's try a different technique in that same, portion of the water column. I've seen that change the outcome for a co-angler in specific, and it's changed my outcome from the front of the boat a ton as well, more so than really anything else. It's just, again, staying in tune with and learning as much as you can from that particular bite and trying to move that into getting the next one.
That's, man, you nailed it, because as you're talking about that kind of, as you were talking, I was going back and thinking about, and Brock's a co-angler, by the way. What's up, man?
Mm-hmm.
It was a great question. I was thinking about some of the top 10s that I've had over the years fishing out of the back of the boat. And most of those have been based on the water column, like you were saying. Just probably the simplest explanation for when and why I had success in those tournaments was, I'll just give an example of probably 5 years ago. We were over fishing Barkley, and my boater had been on a really good spinnerbait bite in the back of one of these coves around a bunch of just floating debris. The water had come up, and there was a big mat of just random floating debris. Well, he ran that pattern, and he only caught one keeper, and he wasn't getting bit. I had a little 4-inch Cinco on a shaky head, and I threw out in the middle of that cove. And before he had his second keeper, I had 5 in the boat, 5 keepers. Yep. So next thing you know, we're fishing a June bug Cinco on a shaky head, and we're catching fish left and right. It was ridiculous. Yep. So he was fishing that mid-depth water column for him. He wasn't slow rolling. He was just kind of traditionally casting. Well, he wasn't getting bit, so I'm like, well, maybe they're on the bottom. And sure enough, they were. Just this year, that's happened to me a couple times. I fished. I got a 5th place finish down at Lake of the Ozarks this year. Yeah. The boater that I was fishing with was scoping out in front of the docks and stuff and some brush, and he was throwing an A-rig and a jerkbait, and he was catching small fish. I mean, like 8 and 10 inch fish. Yeah. Well, I wasn't. To me, I'm watching him, and I'm kind of mimicking what he's doing. I had a lot of confidence in a jerkbait that time of year, right? I'm like, I can throw a jerkbait and A-rig and get bite, right? Well, after watching him not catch them, and he's looking at him, he's throwing at all the right stuff, right? And it's not working for him. How's it going to work for me? Exactly. So I started flipping the jig, and I started catching we started getting bites on the jig. Next thing you know, we slowed down and we basically just scrapped the suspended fish thing and we started catching fish on the bottom. So, and then my most recent tournament on in Kentucky Lake, I fished with Ray Bargy, and he was getting plenty of bites dragging stuff, but I thought, man, I wonder if I could throw a little big bite bait swimmer or something out there, like a 2.8 or whatever, and catch some fish. Sure enough, I caught fish behind him on that. So different parts of the water column. And some of my best tournaments that I've had have been because I'm confident throwing a shaky head. I can throw a shaky head all day long and think I'm going to get a bite. But a lot of times I think, if you're not getting a bite on your confidence bait, you need to think about exactly what you just said. You need to think about what part of the water column is your confidence bait in. And if it's not working, it's not working. So think vertical. That's a good tip, dude. That's a really good tip.
So one thing that I've learned, and it took me, I'm fairly hard-headed, so I get something stuck in my head. It's going to take a minute to get it out, but it's something that it's been very impactful. It's made it's so simple, yet I don't know. I think we tend to overthink this a lot and kind of make this more than what it really is sometimes. But if we've all been fishing on our local lake, and maybe we've been catching them the last couple of weeks, doing a certain thing, a particular pattern, and then all of a sudden we go out. Maybe no conditions, nothing has changed, but we go out and there is not a bass up there. Like, you have been from, you can win every tournament on the lake every day to, like, you don't even think a bass lives in this lake. Everybody listening right now has had that day. Like, dude, are we sure that they didn't die in here?
Yeah.
We're positive that a bass is still in this lake. When you get that feeling of, man, this is hard. Like, this, gosh, I don't even know if they're in here. Like, of course, we all know that, but you're halfway joking.
It's just dead.
But it feels very, very difficult, very hard. As soon, I cannot emphasize this enough, the instant that you get that feeling of going, gosh, this is hard. Like, this isn't easy fishing. Stop. Cut off whatever you're throwing. Stop fishing wherever you're fishing, because it is not working and they're not there. I say they're not there. It's either the bait is not working or they're not where you're at. Because you and we all have seen this on the flip side. We make one change, we make one decision, whether it be to let's go fish steeper banks or let's throw a suspended jerk bait instead of drag a jig, or whatever that decision is. Doesn't matter what it is. We've all had this happen where we just, man, this is so hard. We can't get a bite. We make one decision and you are 0 to hero. Like, we're right back. We're going to catch every one of them we come across. And we're bad about this. When we're struggling and we're not kind of on the deal, so to speak, we tend to revert back and fall back to a handful of confidence baits, a handful of baits. And oftentimes that's fine. And I think that's what you should do. But just make sure it's not the same confidence bait that you've already been throwing, which is typically the case. I can't emphasize enough. If you think that it's hard, they're probably not biting that bait, or you don't have that bait in an area where one can bite it. And as soon as you get around them, it will become easy again, and you'll start catching them. And it's we slow ourselves down when we're struggling, and we tend to kind of stay doing whatever it is that we've been doing. Man, it is a light switch. When you make that decision, you change that color or you pull into the right area, whatever that is, it's always instantaneous. Like, how many times have we been throwing a rattle trap down, down a bank for an hour and go, all right, I know I've thrown it by a bass. Like, they just can't be biting this rattle trap. And we pick up an MR6 and the third cast we catch a 4-pounder. Like, how many times have we done that? I mean, that's not a coincidence. You've thrown by a pile of them down that bank, and none of them wanted that rattle trap. You know what I mean? it's just like if I'd have picked that MR6 up an hour ago, what kind of bag would we have had? So
well, back to that.
All that enough to start putting two and two together. Like, okay, let's not sit here for very long if this isn't working. Let's rock and roll again, whether it's moving areas or changing baits. By the end of practice, until I dial it in, I might, like Champlain, the first day of practice, I literally had a small mound in the bottom of my boat of different minnows and different worms and crankbaits, jerk baits. I'm not going to throw anything for very long, especially now that we have forward facing and you can see his reaction. That speeds all of that up so much for me. Again, I understand how a bass should look and what he should do when he's going to bite. And I also know when he's got a kind of that negative vibe to him, like, I don't know about that. I don't have to throw it for near as long to kind of know based on how they're reacting to it. But even back old school, when we're up really ultra shallow, like you think you're around fish and you're not getting bit with a particular bait, I would change techniques, change colors, do something different. And if that didn't work, I'd get out of there and go somewhere else and do something else. Because you'll know when it happens.
I was going to say, it's how you react to when you make that change and you do get a reaction. Is all that was luck, and you go back to no. There was a reasoning behind that, right? Like, listen to the fish are telling you something. Listen to them.
Well, there's two things real quick. We had Michael Corbishley on here, probably a couple live streams. He just won the most recent MPFL. We were talking about those summer days when it's just dead slick, the sun's high in the sky, and there ain't nothing moving around. It's just, except for sweat coming off your body. That's the only thing that's moving out there. Most of us want to really, really slow down and drag something. And sometimes that's the way to do it. He said you need to do the opposite of that. He said that's when you want to pick up your MR6 or whatever and cover water. You're going for a reaction strike, not a feeding strike. And then the other thing is back to that BFL where I fished with Ray. I had been dragging my confidence shaky head, my favorite Cumberland Pro Lures jig, and all the stuff that I know if I keep in my hand I'm gonna get a bite, and just getting little nibbles here and there, maybe catching a little short fish for a couple hours. So I tied that little 2.8 on my second cast. And this. Here's something I learned the day before pre-fishing. I was fishing with Michael Courtney, and he was talking about that first little roll off. There had been some fish sitting on that, and we were set up. Ray had his boat set up right on that roll off. He was flipping a tree with his jig, but I'm like, man, I'm right on top of that roll off. I'm gonna pick that little swim bait up, and I'm gonna throw it right down the top of that little drop. And my second cast, I let it sink, and when I picked up, it was heavy, and it was a head. It was boom, boom, and he pulled off. But I'm like, hey, that was only my second cast. So about 4 or 5 casts later, I threw it out in front of this dock over there, and boom, I hooked up with a 2.5 pounder. Well, that was like after 2 hours of dragging something, within 10 minutes, I got instant feedback.
Correct.
So I've got confidence in a bait. I'm doing something a little bit different than my boater's doing, and I'm getting feedback. So that right there, that's all you need. I mean, you just get a little bit of confidence.
I can't remember who that was that asked that question, but that's a prime example of you utilizing exactly what I was trying to explain. You did that exact same thing. I mean, you tried where you thought they would be, and again, something else that I feel like we don't. How do you put this into words without it sounding weird? Bass are not as different personality-wise as people. Our moods change all the time, multiple times per day, for various reasons. And your reason is not the same reason as mine. And there are outside factors that all come together to make us what we are and make us do what it is that we do every day. And so fish in a crazy, weird kind of way, you kind of got to think outside the box when you listen to me sometimes. But they're really not all that different than we are. And when you realize that, like, to me, it helped me understand and kind of realize, because when we're reading all of this information and watching all of these podcasts and YouTube videos, and like, we tend to try to make everything is this way or that way, or very black and white. All fish do this time of the year under these conditions. What we're finding now is that they're doing all kind of stuff. I mean, there's always a pattern that is generally what the majority of them are doing, but I think they're doing, even some of them are doing that exact same thing for various different reasons, in different parts of the lake. And again, there are lots of different scenarios that all kind of come into that. But as silly as it sounds, it's helped me to make sense of things more when I look at it that way, and kind of understand that, okay, none of this is black and white or as perfect as we want it to be. And fish can do things for various reasons. And I don't know why, but it's just allowed me to keep an open mind to know, boy, I'm getting out there saying this on live podcast, but like, as crazy as the world's getting, and we got some crazy folks out there, we got some funny ones, we got some cool ones, we got people of all shapes and kinds. It's no different in the fishing world. Like, we've got fish out here, two largemouth bass that are the exact same size and the exact same shape, and one's out here in left field doing his deal, and one's way over here, and they're not in correlation with each other at all, and for the vast majority of the year. And so, again, I don't want to say that to like spin everybody out and make them think about it, but it helped me to understand, because I, for a long time, kind of had this tunnel vision of, in the summer, the bass are offshore on the river ledges, and that's the only way to catch them, and that's the only, I need a big plug, a big worm, and a big football jig, and maybe a big swim bait. Like, yeah, that's the predominant thing here on Kentucky Lake, but it's not the only thing. There's some bluegill eaters, and there's some fish in the backs of the bays around shallow wood. There's a lot of fish that are doing various things, and different conditions will open up opportunities or give you something, a situation that you can utilize to your advantage. And keeping that open mind is really, really important in this deal, because, again, it's making that decision fast and efficiently, and with a good reasoning behind it. But and sometimes I don't even think my reasoning is really the real reasoning, but if it makes sense to me and it catches them, I don't, it doesn't matter. But I always, it's just the way I think. I always kind of have to have a why, what, when, and where with a bass, and try to put it towards the next fish catch.
Well, you say that, you think about like the tournament that you won, you guys rotating through multiple schools, right? You find that one off the beat pattern where they're on bluegill, where they're on, a shallow bank, that gives you something to go do while you want that school to rest, or
absolutely,
or maybe the deal ain't working that day, right?
Yep, right. That last day, I would have given anything to have had, a good backup plan. And I spent probably half or 3/4 of one practice day and maybe a couple hours of another day actually trying to find something else, because I could see all these guys idling over. I mean, I would find a school and go, ooh, that's a little off the wall. And I wouldn't get 3 more places down the lake and turn around and look, and there'd be somebody idling over them. And they just turned around, so they saw them. I mean,
that's good.
Yeah. So it's like, I spent time looking for bluegill eaters, and I spent time in brush, and I did even went up in the dirt for a little while. But it just, in that particular tournament, it just seemed like that's where the majority of the quality was, and where you could trigger that. It was really kind of a funky tournament. It was not an easy tournament. As far as getting these fish to bite, like, you really had to find inside these schools. They would all get kind of broken up and kind of spread out, but inside of that school, there might be 3 or 4 of them that would congregate together and kind of get grouped up, and those were the ones that you needed to attack and kind of present a bait to. I can't tell you how many times in those 3 days that I would sit on a school for 10 or 15 minutes fishing, but almost like waiting, looking, hunting for that little cluster of them. And when you find it, catch one almost on the first cast. But you almost never could get those individuals, those single solitary fish to fire. Now, they follow your bait all day long. Like,
yeah.
Holy cow, if I could have had a partner that could have stuck a dip net 3 feet in front of the trolling motor that tournament, I'd have weighed in 90 pounds. But so could everybody else. I mean, that's just the mood they were in. I think they were fairly fresh, off the spawn, like relatively soon after. And sometimes they're not in the greatest of moods. I mean, they're kind of a little fickle. That's not eating is not at the top of their priority at that point.
I like how you talked about the moods, and I relay it. We all have kids, and I relay it to kids a lot of times. Like 100%. You got that one kid that likes to chase butterflies in left field and do whatever. That's the feral child, if you will.
Yep.
And then you got the other one that's like dead serious and
prim and proper, perfect.
Yeah. We all have one of each of those. If you have multiple children, typically.
Yep.
I got, and they change too.
They do. You're right. I'm learning that. I've got my first teenager now. We're in new territory here. But you're exactly right. That's a great analogy because they do change, and you the way that you approach, and I say approach like carefully, the way that you approach a scenario or a situation that you have to work out with that particular child. I'm going to handle that differently based on which child it is and how they react. And I know that just from watching their tendencies and their habits and their mood swings. But it's the very same thing with a bass or most other fish. Like there's not always a good way to look out there and say, okay, there's the rambunctious one. We need to throw a jerk bait and rip it 100 mile an hour past him, or this one's sluggish. He's not doing, there's not always a guaranteed way you can just look up there and know that. But you can tell it after time and after you look at several of them. And again, a lot of the times they'll all generally be in the same mood. But it's funny, like at Champlain, I throw about 30 or 40 of them and they wouldn't even they turn away almost. And then you find one as soon as your bait hit the water. Before you could even click the bail over, he'd race up there and have it. It's like, what's different about that fish? He's sitting exactly where all the rest of them are, but that one raced up there and got it.
I saw a fish a while back where you're throwing at some fish, and they're doing this, they're coming back up, or they'll follow it, and then all of a sudden here comes this random fish out of nowhere. I don't know where he came from, and he swims right over there, just sucks it right up. Just out of nowhere.
I saw that this spring and winter crappie fishing. You'll throw in a school of crappie, and the biggest one of the group will bolt out of the bottom of the school. You'll see all of them get out of his way. He'll come up and eat it, and he's going in the grease. I promise you that. I don't do all that work to turn them loose. I put them in the grease. I promise you that.
That's right.
But then all of a sudden, it's like, what in the world? Like, why are none of the rest of these biting? Like, I was the biggest one, the dumbest one in this whole group, but I can't get any 10 inches to bite just to fill up a cooler.
You're right.
Hey, I got to address this comment right here from Jacob.
Ross.
Yeah, so this is kind of funny that you brought this up with Bob Ross. The other night I was just kind of researching t-shirts, some of the bands that I like. I was just looking to see if they had any t-shirts out there, and maybe you can make your own t-shirts. And there was a Bob Ross t-shirt, and it said it had his typical painting with the trees, and he's like, let's just paint a little bitty happy Sasquatch right here in the background. And there's a little bitty Sasquatch back there. I was like, so I saw the Bob Ross. I'm like, I gotta that's classic.
That's hilarious.
I think we kind of answered.
Is Bob Ross? Is that the curly-haired guy?
The white guy with the big old afro.
Did on like News Channel 4 or whatever back in the day.
And he always paints happy little trees.
Yeah.
It's amazing to watch those people take just a canvas.
As boring as painting seems to be, Like, it's mesmerizing to watch a true artist do what he does and take this smear of yellow paint and turn it into a school bus in like 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. That freaks me out.
Yeah, but hold on. But that same guy sees you take a bait caster, skip a jig 60 feet, away under the dock through a hole that's that big, and rip a bass out. Like, he's thinking the same thing. Like, how in the world did you do that?
Right. So, exactly. You're right.
We sell ourselves short a lot about what we can do, whether it's the knowledge of the game that we play or the, it doesn't matter. Whatever your talent is or whatever your specialty is, we forget a lot of times that there's somebody out there that
we have a friend of the family who's very good at. She's an artist, and then I've had a couple friends in the past, and they they see space differently than a lot of people do. Like there's as a younger kid, well, actually probably when I was in my 20s, I had a friend that I don't know what it's called, but he can color in the space around things to make it's the opposite of what you do. Normally we
instead of drawing the object, he colors
around
to make the object.
Yes, he did a Johnny Cash portrait like that. Oh man, it was awesome. I bought it from him. I got it somewhere, but he could just see the other way and know how to fill everything in. And next thing you know, there's this face looking at you, and you're like, "Where in the heck did that come from?"
Well, it's so different than you like listening to music. Like you hear, you're a bass player, so you hear the bass.
Yeah.
Where I just hear, I
hear everything but the bass. Most of the time when and please don't beat me here, but like most of the time I'm like, is this cat just like to be a part of the band? But he's not really that good, so we're just gonna let him play the bass because nobody can hear it anyway. Like,
I tell you what though, you take the bass out of a song and it'll change it.
You're probably right. You are, but
you'll notice if it's not there.
And I'm not a big music guy. Like I listen to music to pass time, but like, man, I'll say I'll new song will come out and I'll tell my wife about it. She's like, well, what's it called? What's the lyrics? I'm like, I don't know. It's just got a good tune. Like it's got a good beat to it.
It sounds good.
Yeah, it sounds good. I'm not even really listening to the words in it, like the lyrics, the meaning behind it. But
no, I'm with you because he's the musician of the group, and like he hears all that stuff, and whether it's looking at a screen, whether it's typing 300 words a minute, it's all a skill and it's all a learned skill. You hear things different, artists see things different, and we look at because that bird chirped the right way that morning and the wind's blowing just out of the right direction. I know that I can run to these 3 spots on the lake and catch them today.
Correct.
And I know that because you've done it 10,000 times.
Right. And I say that, and I'm so fascinated about talking about the artist and like how they can do that backwards and that sort of thing. But like going back to what you were saying, I mean, it's somewhat similar of like what I'm experiencing this year and really last year too, and maybe a touch even into the year before. I just wasn't fishing a lot of major tournaments, but I don't know. It's like used to I would bounce around and I had a general idea, like everybody, of what was going on, and I would get a bite, and like maybe I correlate that to the next bite, or maybe I don't. And what's so weird is now, and I can't even really explain it, but it's like now when I get a bite, instead of that, like, okay, that was I caught that jig, caught that fish off of a jig, it's post spawn, coming out of this little pocket on a boat dock. Now when I catch that fish, like I don't even know how to put it into words, but now it's like everything makes sense. Like not just about that one fish, like it just somehow everything is like what you were talking about, being able to see it backwards. And I don't understand it that well, but like I can feel that I'm learning more with less information, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it's really, I don't know. Sometimes I go, how did I even get to that? Like, what, you look back at the tournament, like, how did I even get to that pattern? Like, where did I come across? How did I think of that, strategy or whatever it is? But it's interesting, and again, it all kind of goes back to, you're making good decisions. And, but it's been fun to kind of dial in that if you can. I don't even know. I mean, again, it's so hard for me to even like really put that into words as to like how to express that feeling. But now, instead of like this uncomfortable, uneasy, wasn't sure about, a pattern or a body of water, now it just seems like, man, just give me a couple hours, just give me a couple bites, and things start to fall into place. And it, again, that bite helps me get the next one, which tells me, okay, these aren't big ones. Let's go do this. And that, it all helps you kind of funnel into the right pattern, the right location. It all kind of gets you where you need to be, whatever way possible.
Yeah. We got a winner. Waves won, number 37. That was the giveaway clue. Just get a hold of me.
You snuck that one in there tonight, didn't you?
Yeah, just get a hold of me on Facebook or Instagram, either way, and we'll get you taken care of.
Man, I've had a mosquito for about 3/4 of this podcast.
I've been watching you swat him, and you still haven't got him yet.
I don't know how he's even flying anymore. Like, I think he's going to be around my ankles here in a minute.
I've had problems with those flies, like just a normal house fly that wants to bite you.
Oh, I've been plagued by those. At LBL over there?
Yeah, I just wherever. Flies? I think they flew up. They flew up in this area too, and you can't hardly catch them. They're fast.
But what's weird is those biting flies. Why are they only on the LBL side and not on the west side of the lake? Not saying you won't find one over there, but you go to the LBL side, you won't be there very long before you get biting flies in the boat. And once they're in the boat, buddy, they are clung to the rest of the day.
It doesn't matter. You can pick up and run 3 miles down the lake and stop, and they'll be right there.
You shut down, his butt's right back on you biting.
Yeah, they're holding on to the carpet or something. I don't know what they do.
I don't know where they go. They're all up under
my holding on to one. They got one leg, and they're just holding on.
It's awful too. We get them at Cedar every once in a while.
Yeah, they're over there now.
And you'll just start. You feel like an idiot. You're up there dancing around, slapping your legs, and my dad's back there just laughing at me. It's 95 out, and he's got blue jeans on.
Yeah, 112 outside.
He's got blue jeans on, long sleeve shirt. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one in my mail truck today. I was delivering mail, and there was one kept biting me in the back of the calf. And I look down there, and I don't see him. And then I forget about it. And 5 minutes later, and I'm.
That's about how this mosquito is up here. Yeah. It's like by the time I forget about him, he gets me again.
You're just going to be all whelped up by tomorrow.
I am. I guarantee you.
That's the worst. You get one that itches all night long. You can't do anything about it. Keeps you up all night.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Hey, a couple more questions, and we'll shut her down. 5 baits that you have to have on your boat this time of the year on the Tennessee River. What would your 5 baits be? I know that's kind of tough to pick out just 5, but
the obvious. You kind of got to have some of your staple, ledge baits. I'm gonna have a big 10-inch worm, a big okie, that straight tail new high floating formula there at Yamamoto. Caught a bunch of fish Nico rigging that worm and just standard Texas rigging it. It's a worm that I haven't really stroked a worm a whole lot, but I've caught a bunch of them this year stroking that worm. And I don't know if it's, just that it's a long, big, 10, 12-inch worm, that flotation of like that whole worm kind of standing up or what it is. But I've caught a bunch doing that. But, your standard swim baits and a big plug. I'm always going to have a big crankbait tied on this time of year. It's one of my favorite ways to catch them. It's getting close to that time of the year, like usually by the end of June, they're pretty educated to a plug, and I'm still always going to have one on the deck, because if you can get a school to fire on it, if you can find a group that hasn't seen a bait in a while, it's still the most efficient way to get your bait into the school quickly and trigger a big bite, get him in the boat and get right back in there. A worm, like if they're biting a deep diving crankbait, if they're biting a plug and they're biting a 3/4 ounce football jig, just exactly the same, at the same rate, I should say, as Soon as it gets into the school, one bites it as quick as it gets there. I'm going to outfish you. I'm going to outcatch you, not outfish. I'm going to outcatch you 3-1 on that plug versus a football jig. And they're biting it at exactly the same rate. As soon as it gets inside the school, one bites it. But I can simply make a cast and wind my plug into that school much faster than you're going to drag your football jig, because you're inevitably going to cast it past them, work your way in, you'll work your way into them. So it's, again, goes back to the efficiency. Like, if I can make those big ones eat a plug and they're eating it good enough to keep them hooked up, I'm going to do that because I can catch more in a shorter period of time on that than what I could on really most any other bait, to be honest with you. A big spoon the same way. You can get that spoon into them pretty quick too.
There's something about them knocking 6 foot of slack on a plug too, isn't there? That's just the best.
These fish out here on Kentucky Lake have it's a pretty bold statement, but I feel pretty comfortable saying it, that the vast majority of the bass out here, as of about 6 weeks ago, had never seen a deep diving crankbait. Buddy, you could tell it. It was ugly. I mean, you didn't get it that far inside of a school before one ate it. Now, I've heard they've wised up since, and that's usually the case. But, these fish are, right now we've got a ton of 14 to, 17 inchers, that good, 1 3/4 to 2 3/4, maybe 3 pounds. It's kind of what we have in the lake. And, last year there were a few schools out and a few guys saw them and understood it and fished for them. But for the most part, even last year, there weren't a lot of people out there fishing for them. And so the fish that are alive in this lake now have not, up until this summer, have not had a ton of pressure out there. And so it's cool. Like, you pull up on a school, and again, several weeks ago, and like, truly, these fish may not have ever seen a big 10-inch worm or a deep diving crankbait, a big magnum spoon. And some of our old traditional baits, these fish have never seen. And I'm telling you, I had a week there that it was some of the most incredible. Didn't catch a lot of great big bags, but it was some of the most incredible, like, numbers of fish catching.
I seen you catching them over your back. You had a little bit.
Yeah, it got dumb. I mean, it got silly. Like, I was catching over 200 a day. Of course, I say that. I'm guessing. When you catch that many, I'm not keeping count. But I mean, I say, all right, you think, well, I think I caught 200 today, and you go, nah, there's no way. But then you sit back and go, well, I caught at least 30 out of this school. I caught at least 20 out of that school. I caught 50 out of that school. Like, you do that 10 times in a day, you've caught well over 200,
And you caught them on every cast.
Yeah, every cast, right? I mean, in some of those schools, I would leave them biting because they would, they'd start pretty good, but you catch 10 or 15, they'd start shrinking in size. So I just go find another group. And, man, it's impressive how quick this lake has rebounded and the progress that we've seen really throughout all of the species that we have. We're catching a ton of sauger now that we haven't seen that in a long time. The crappie fishing has just been unreal. Everything, the catfishing, my goodness, there are too many catfish. I wish somebody would go out there and start fishing for them a lot more. Commercial fishing for them. They're getting them away out there.
Hey, we're gonna give away another $25 Baitworks gift card. You want to get in, if you want to get in the drawing, hashtag ledge, all capital letters, LEDGE. We'll let this run for a couple minutes and then we'll give away.
Is that because it's thundering outside? We just figure we'll roll.
Yeah, just feeling it's been a couple weeks since we've given anything away to the fine folks.
Is it thundering over in y'all's part?
Oh my goodness,
yeah, we got a heck of a.
My wife just texted me a while ago and's like, hey, had to go clean up all the toys in the backyard. We got a little blow up pool out there, and everything is gone.
So, yeah. It's funny. I pulled in quick story. I pulled in from New York the other day, or actually St. Clair. Went over there for a couple of days, but anyway, I got home. I'd been gone for like almost 2 weeks. Been a good 2 weeks. Still got AOY, lead and spent like virtually the entire drive home answering interviews and phone calls and friends and that sort of thing. And this kind of like this surreal, very humbling kind of hero status of, doing this. And I pull, literally, you can't make this up. I pull into the driveway, just like my head so big, I probably couldn't have fit it out the truck door. And I go down, I got this big hill that I got to go down, and I pull in. And as soon as I top the hill and start down, I go, wait a minute, what is all that up there? Like, it's not normally in my driveway. My son, love him to death, but my son apparently got preoccupied in the process of taking the trash out and just stopped and just like literally dropped the trash bag about halfway between the house and the can. Never went back. Of course, they left. They went out of town for a couple of days. And so anyway, I came home to apparently a huge family of coons got in the worst, nastiest bit of trash, and it's like 98 outside.
Oh,
so I go you're talking about doing honeydews. I go from being this hero to now I'm picking up nasty trash out here in my driveway, all in about a 5-minute span. So it was kind of like, all right, you're back home. Welcome to dad life.
That's right.
Welcome home. But I wouldn't want it any other way. I mean, that's it's so cool to do this and to kind of live. I am who I am. I'm try to treat everybody the way I want to be treated, and try to have a good time doing it. But it's really kind of interesting living this kind of double life of, you're on the road and you try to spend as much time as you can with everybody that wants to be there and certainly get your job done. There's a lot of stress and time involved into that, but to have all of that, and then literally in the last 50 yards of my driveway, I've got to totally switch gears and be dad and be that hero again. And to have that time to devote to them and to make them feel as important as they are. And, it's special. It's cool. I've still got a lot to learn on that side of it. It's really hard for me to turn that switch off, and be, again, I don't want anybody to think bad about that. Like I enjoy the kids, but it's just, man, you get so wrapped up in this and that you're on the verge of doing something that you've always dreamed of. And I've caught myself kind of taking this a little too serious. And really in the last couple of weeks, I've tried to just make sure and keep everything fun and have a good time doing it. Enjoy your time with the kids. They're getting older and dad's getting less cool, unfortunately. And so I know my time is short with them, and I want to spend as much time as I can with them and make the most of that. So we're doing the best we can with it, but we've still got a lot to learn.
Oh, I understand. 100%.
Amen to that.
I understand, man. Time, it just lets you just realize how precious time is, regardless of whether you're being a dad or you're trying to reach the highest pinnacle of professional fishing. It's all super, super valuable. You just don't want to make sure you don't want to be wasting any time, but you gotta take some breaths and relax sometimes too, and just let life happen. But
yes, you just have to let it happen. And I have taken a little bit of a different mentality the last couple of years, just to life in general. I've really tried to. I'm kind of that, like, I'm a highly anxious person. I try to hide it, but honestly, I'm always anxious about something. My brain's always going 1,000 miles an hour about, whatever it is. And not necessarily like a worry wart. It's more of like stressors that we have. It's everybody does, like the next tournament, the AOY, it's everything. Making sure I take care of Carson tomorrow and I'm at his school function or after school function, whatever it is. I'm always kind of anxious, and I've really in the last couple of years tried to be very mindful of like my mental state and try to stay positive. And, it's so easy both in fishing and in life for us to get in that rut, kind of that mental state of just not motivated. You don't feel good about whatever it is you're doing. And that never equates to, success in a high rate, at least. You'll have little, high spots and places where, you see some success, but that mentality change of just trying to stay positive and again, it's another thing that's hard for me to like point my finger and put my finger right here and say, this is what's done it. But I feel better every morning waking up. You know, it helps doing what you love to do and what you're extremely passionate about. But to wake up with that good attitude and kind of the, you know, what are we going to conquer today attitude is, man, it's really helped me. It keeps me grounded. Like, I'm humble with it, try to stay, but again, I feel like it keeps me motivated, but motivated in the right way. And I guess what I'm trying to get to is, like, I feel like, and I've done this so many times, where you want something to happen so bad that you try so hard that it just, like, the harder you try it, the worse it goes. And the more wrong everything is, the worse the decisions are. And, you know, whatever it is. And I don't know, somehow I'm fishing really free this year. I'm working free. Like, my mind I feel free and I feel good and positive. And I don't know how to tell anyone to get into that mindset or how to do that. I don't claim to know, but it's certainly made a really big impact in my life. And I don't see how positivity and you know, that good positive outlook on, you know, again, we've got to be realistic with what we're dealt with, but there is a, you know, positive and a negative way to spin something. And it just seems like once you get that positive momentum kind of rolling in your direction, gosh, you just kind of step back and let it roll from there, let it go, you know, let it run its course, so to speak.
Definitely. Question here. We're gonna give away this Baitworks gift card, but as this thing is spinning, what are your favorite rain lures? Me personally, my favorite thing to throw in a rain is a spinnerbait and a toad. Those are like two that top
spinnerbait, chatterbait, kind of hand in hand. You know, I'll kind of throw both, depending on the cover that we're fishing. But something that I have, it doesn't seem like they bite it every time it rains, but man, a buzzbait. One of those
buzzbait,
like oversized blade or like a clacker blade on it, something that's making a lot of noise, creating a big disturbance. I've caught some really, really big ones in the rain on a buzzbait.
We got a winner. Army Outdoors. Congratulations. That's cool. Just shoot me a message, brother, and we'll get you taken care of. Yeah. What about you?
I like any kind of topwater, like buzzbait, spook. I don't know, just something about it causing an extra little disturbance in the water. It seems like something's going to happen. Whether it's like you said, I'm going kind of generic, but throwing a toad over a mat or a frog over a mat, something like that. It just seems like you get some of those bigger bites. Like me and another buddy always talk about the dirty 30 when it's raining. Like, that's the day that you're going to catch it.
Yep.
And I was on the way over here, I was listening to a podcast with Zona and Mercer. They were talking about 31 to 35 pound bags of smallmouth.
Whoa.
And 30 bags of smallmouth are becoming regular, apparently.
Do what now?
30 pound bags of smallmouth are becoming regular.
Ooh. We still hadn't cracked that mark. I've had a couple high 20s, but I don't know that I've had 30 yet. Not all smallmouth. I did have one. I probably did have 130 day, but I had a great big largemouth. It kind of like made the bag. You know?
Well, so yeah. I haven't listened to the whole podcast, but that's what they were saying. Like, you go down to Florida, you go down to Texas, and you catch 31, 32 pounds, but you got a 9 or 10 pounder in there.
Got a great big one in there to make it. Yeah.
You go up to St. Clair or to Michigan or one of the Great Lakes and you catch 30, you got 5 that are 6+ pounds.
Right. They're all identical cookie cutters.
And they're all like, you catch a 4 pounder and you're like, okay.
Right. Yeah. Boy, I hope we're weighing in a dirty 30 at St. Clair.
I hope you are too, man. That would just be legit,
that's
right?
Gonna be a fun event.
Hey, I'll ask you one more question. We'll wrap this up. What are your thoughts on on the BPT, like the catch, weigh, and release format, because you're fishing the invitationals, you're leading the angler of the year. It's going to come down to one tournament, and I think what do they take the top
five.
Top five.
Top five.
Wow. Okay. So you got to keep your head in the game.
So I'm really excited about the Bass Pro Tour. I haven't really I'm not focused on it yet. We've still got a lot of work to do.
Sure.
And Angler of the Year and BPT qualification will absolutely come down to the very last cast, the very last minute, before check-in. It's just kind of the way this entire year's gone. And what a great group of guys there on the Invitationals and the BPTs as well. But I'm telling you, and I know this gets said, this is, there's no way that I can portray the camaraderie and the commonalities that the group that we have now at the Invitationals. We're all on the same page. We're all extremely competitive, but have found a way to do it in a very respectful way with each other and working with each other. At the last tournament, I had a little whoopsie moment, with my motor and just simply almost ran lower unit completely out of oil. I changed the oil, way less than 100 hours ago, but it had apparently been using oil, and my fault for not checking it. But day two, I've got a pretty good bag at 10 o'clock in the morning, and my motor's going into Guardian every time I try to get it up on plane. And so I called the tournament director. I had seen a good friend of mine, Jaden Parrish. I say good friend. We're really good friends now. However, we haven't even known each other that long, and really just talk to each other, see each other in weigh-in lines, and blast off, that sort of thing. But anyway, he drove by and I waved him down. And of course, again, it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and he's in like 7th or 8th in the points. I mean, he's right there in contention for BPT. And he told me, he said, man, I'm fishing up this way, up above you. You're in between me and the boat ramp. If I need to come down here, I was doing it 2:30. He was doing it 2:45. And he told me, even with the BPT qualification well within his grasp, he told me, he said, look, if you're still in trouble at 2 o'clock, 2:15, you find me, you get a hold to me. I will come in early to make sure that you get there. And that's just one small little snippet of, hundreds of scenarios and things that have happened this year on the Invitationals that, man, you just don't see that in any other sport. You don't see that I haven't seen that in any other tour. Most of us are fairly young. A lot of us, this is our first year doing it, full time. And so we've all kind of got some gray area and somewhere that we're not super comfortable with, wherever it may be in the industry. And maybe it's on the business side or whatever it is. It's just so unique to have this group of guys that we're all, again, from the second that Kevin says go, we're highly competitive with each other. But we also, once we turn in our little fobs at the end of the day, I can't wait to see how Drew and how Jaden and Alec and my roommates have all done. I want them all to catch fish, but I want to catch them just a little bit better. And,
right.
And so it's been fun this year, and I really, who knows what we're going to do next year, but gosh, and again, we're jumping ahead of ourselves here, but right. Going to the Bass Pro Tour, it's going to be hard walking away from some of the guys that fished their hearts out this year. I mean, you look at the and we haven't even talked about this, but I was talking to a good friend of mine, Kobe Miller. He's fishing the Invitationals and really got to know him here the last few tournaments. And he called me on my ride home and he said, man, have you looked at the AOY numbers, like the points there? I can't remember, so don't hold me to all this, but y'all need to go look at it. It's impressive. I don't think Ron Nelson, who is a tremendous angler and had a great year last year, won Angler of the Year. I don't think if you took his total points for last year, I don't know that he would be in the top 10 in the Angler of the Year this year. He certainly would not be in BPT qualification. Wouldn't even be in the realm of wouldn't be possible. The numbers aren't there for him to even qualify for next year. So to see that caliber and like that jump, that leap, and we're all just having great years. Look, they're most everyone there in the invitationals is there for a reason, and they can all catch them, and they all have that potential to, you know, to be right there with the Bass Pro Tour. But to have 10 or 12 guys that are catching them as good as they're catching them this year, it's just, I mean, my worst finish so far is 24th right here on Kentucky Lake. Like,
yeah,
crazy. 1-1 of second. You know, I think all the rest of them are top 10s. Like, it's insane.
It reminds me of the rookie class in the elites this year. Like last year in the opens, how tight things were in the opens. Like this year, it's completely different. You can have a 65th or 72nd finish and still be in the hunt.
The worst finish last year, the 9 was like 44th place or something crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
so you're experiencing a lot of that in the invitations this year.
I don't know what my average is, but I mean, it's somewhere like a 7th or 8th place average, and I'm only 6 points ahead of second place. Like, normally
it's tight.
You would be lapping the field with that kind of average. So it's just, man, it's again, all of it is so much fun, and that's exactly how, I mean, look, would I love to, you know, go into the Detroit River with a 70-point lead and like basically you catch a bass and get back in every day, you've won. Yeah, that would be cool. But man, this is how it should be. This is what it's about. Like, we're fixing to duke it out, and I say duke it out. Alec and I are good buddies, and I wish him the best of luck. Like, I hope he catches 20 a day. I just hope I catch 20 and a half a day. You know,
right.
I want to catch him just a little bit better than he does. But regardless of the outcome, this is exactly what I've always dreamed of. If I'm going to win one, I want it to be this way. I want us to all be right there and for all of us to have a good year. You know, I don't want to win it. And I can't even remember, and this goes to show you why. Like, I can't remember who even won Angler of the Year that Aaron Martins had, you know, such a great year and had Angler of the Year wrapped up and actually lost the tournament and Angler of the Year in the Detroit River. His motor came off in the Miracle Mile there and lost Angler of the Year. Like, I don't want to win that way. Nothing against whoever it was that year.
Right.
But if I win, I want to know that I beat everybody because I outfished everybody.
That's like you want to be on the way. You want to be on the way in, pick up the guy that's dropping at your heels and take his fish in with you.
Take his fish in and still beat him 100%. Yeah. I'd love that.
Yeah, that's
and it would be perfectly okay with me if I picked Alec up and he beat me. Like, that's fair and square.
Right.
But I don't want to beat you because you didn't make it back or whatever. I mean, there's multitude of scenarios. Especially
take out the uncontrollables, right? Like,
absolutely.
Like the year that Swindle won his second AOY, Hackney got disqualified in a marina, if I remember that right.
Yep.
And that's why
Swindle, that's what cost it. Yep.
Right. Now he had put him in, Gerald had put himself in contention. He was right there.
Correct.
You know, he was sniffing, but it took something like that to happen. And you know,
and again, I don't mean that in any negative way towards anyone that has won that way. I have won a tournament through, you know, a situation. You know what I mean? Like, I won the tournament, but I walked away from it really like I didn't win that. You know what I mean? It's a win. You call it a win, but personally, I didn't catch the biggest 5 bass that particular day. I just, on paper, it's the way it all worked out.
What do you think about the catch, weigh, and release though? Like, are you you think you're gonna be okay doing that? Because, you know, as of now, it's all about catching the 5 biggest fish.
Right.
That's a different deal, kind of.
It is. It's a different deal. Although, you know, I feel like generally, and I think I've heard Rob and JT talk about this. I hope that I'm going to say this correctly, but they've worked out the percentages where way more than most of the time. I mean, it's somewhere in like the 90th percentile. The guy that wins the tournament caught the most fish, and he caught the biggest 5.
Right.
I mean, there are oddballs where you have somebody that caught a 9-pounder that put him over the edge, or you know, there's certainly outside scenarios there, but generally speaking, the guy that catches the most is probably going to run into the biggest 5, and so I've always been that way. Like I've never been like you look at a Kelly Jordan or who am I thinking about? There's somebody that always gets big fish on the elites, and it's like the same guy all the time. I'm drawing a blank, but anyway, Kelly was one of them. Still a big fish guy. Like I don't know how that guy could pick up a cricket and he's gonna catch a 7-pounder on it. Like the dude just gets a big bite. He's not even necessarily fishing for all big ones. He just gets a big bite all the time. Like I'm not that way. I'm a numbers guy. Like I got to go through a bunch of them, and I'll eventually stumble into a big one here or there. But I don't know that the catch, weigh, and release is much of a factor or strategically different than it is the multitude of days. You fish a day, you're off a day. You fish a day, you're off a day. Those stretching this out is what really changes the dynamic more than a catch, weigh, and release, and every fish counts, in my opinion. Because again, if you go back to that statistic of the guy that catches the most is usually going to have the biggest 5, you just got to stay on top of them. Like you just need to stay around them, and if you'll do that, odds are, you're putting the odds in your favor when you stay around them. And strategically speaking, in this, the real question mark is how is it during practice? How can I maximize my practice to stay this far ahead of them? Because now I'm not having to worry about 3 days. I'm having to worry about 6 days, 7 days, however long it is. I mean, you stretch those things out for a while, and I'm hearing that they may go to a shorter tournament period next year. Like I think it's going to be roughly the same amount of days, but they're somehow, I don't know what they're going to do, but I see that strategically being more of a factor and something that I'm going to have to overcome and something that I'm going to have to work on is just how to practice for, you already know when you find this winning group of fish that they're not going to be there. Like you just have to know that. I mean, I know that going into my tournaments because oftentimes I may find that group of fish. If I find it on the first day of practice, well, that's 4 days before my tournament starts.
Yeah.
Like, how often has the winning group of fish stayed doing the same thing for more than 2 days? Like, not very often.
And so then people are beating up on them too.
Yeah,
group A and Group B, there's people out there.
Exactly. Yep. But the longer you put in between the time that you found those fish doing that one particular thing and when you actually need to utilize them, the longer that period is, the more likely that they've gone off and done something else, and you kind of have to just keep up with them more or less, and how is going to be different for each body of water and kind of how they're setting up. But I feel like after you see the Wheelers and the Connells right now, and several other guys. There are a lot of, there are several of them that are consistently finding a way to stay ahead of the fish, and therefore they're going to stay at the top of the standings. And that's what I'm going to have to get in there and figure out. That's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, and then you've got the, managing your fish type of thing too, because you're not trying to win those first couple rounds.
First couple days, or just as long as you get through, it's just as good as you winning those rounds. Correct.
Yeah, correct. You don't want to burn it all down day one and catch 80 pounds and the next closest was 40. You want to be in that middle of that pack unless you got 3 of those spots that you can go catch 80 at for multiple days.
Yeah, you want to get enough of a lead that where you can go practice and not worry about somebody slipping up, because
it's kind of and I'm going to rub somebody the wrong way here, and everybody's just going to have to keep an open mind when I say this. Strategically speaking, and I only mean strategically, I'm not talking the competition level of men and women that are competing there. I'm not talking about format, but I almost kind of look at from a strategic standpoint. Invitationals are like dirt track racing, the smaller toned down go-karts, and your Bass Pro Tour is like Daytona 500. You know what I mean? Like it's, again, I only mean that from a strategic standpoint. But there's just so much more that's involved with the BPT and their format and the way kind of maximize your opportunities. And again, just simply staying on top of these fish, because from the time that you find them to the time that you may need them could be 6 or 7 days. And by that point, goodness, who knows? I mean, there's just so many factors. So many things have changed in 7 days. So it's going to be cool. And I think that's going to be something that I'm really excited about going into that, because again, that's just kind of what I enjoy is learning something new and figuring out kind of the next best thing. And this strategy deal is definitely going to be a big part of that.
Yeah, I think your style sets up well for that format. I really do, because you do catch a lot of numbers, and that's kind of what it's all about. Like you said, if you're catching numbers and you're in the right areas, odds are you're going to stumble into some bigger fish.
I mean, we've all been in those areas where it's nothing but 12 inchers. I understand that, but generally speaking, when you get around a big group of fish and they've got 3, if you can catch a 3-pounder, and this is all relative to what lake you're on and the size of the fish in there, but like here on Kentucky Lake, if I pull into a school, it might have 1,000 bass in it. If I catch a 3-pounder in there, in my mind, chances are there's probably a 4 to 6-pounder in there too. Mm-hmm. If I pull in there and catch 20 or 30 little bitty rats every single cast, there might be one in there, but it's just you kind of have to decipher. And again, a lot of that goes back on your past experiences and your knowledge base to make that call of maybe there's one in there, maybe there's not. But generally speaking, when you get into these areas where there's a lot of fish, there's big ones mixed in there too.
I forgot to say this, but I just want to say this, and I don't know if you watched this or not, but the heavy hitters tournament this year was one of the best tournaments I've seen in a long time. That was a dang good tournament.
I need to go back and watch that.
Man, it was good, dude. It was good. They were frog fishing.
That's what I heard. It was a bunch of flat
the thing I liked about it was they made a 3-pound minimum on that last day. So instead of, Jacob Wheeler or Dustin Connell or whoever getting a 30-pound lead and it being over, in the first period, there was a lot of 2.5 pound, 2 3/4 pound fish that didn't count. So it kept things super, super tight. And it was right there, even right there at the end. There were several people that were one bite away.
Really?
It's a really good tournament, man. I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I've heard a lot of people talk about it. I need to go back. I haven't been so busy. I haven't had a chance to watch live this year. Like that's one thing that I'm disappointed about how can you complain? I'm fishing so much that I don't get to watch fishing. Like, come on, let's cry about that. But
I'd rather be fishing than watching fishing.
Yeah.
But delivering mail, it's nice to watch fishing while I'm delivering. Well, listen to fishing while I'm delivering mail. It's nice.
Exactly.
I want to hit your mailboxes.
I am so into learning and kind of what's the next best thing and how am I not doing this right and what are you doing differently? And like I can learn that at a very rapid pace with live. Because I'm not using necessarily my experiences, I'm using his.
Exactly.
I can kind of grow off of that. And,
especially when you're fishing the same tournament.
To watch like 6 or 7 different guys on the exact same day,
yes,
at the exact same time. They're all making real-time decisions based on what they're seeing. And so if you kind of read in between the lines on the live and really watch and listen to in between what they're talking about. Like they're not just going to lay it all out there. You're going to have to kind of use context clues and put it together. But like I can know what Dean Rojas is thinking and his mentality and his mindset and what he thinks is going on. And I can also 30 seconds later flip over to Wheeler and get a totally different outlook on the same body of water on the same exact day under the same exact conditions. And I can learn from that. So I guarantee you I will have a lot of days I'm going to lay on the couch this winter, cuddle up in a blanket and watch a bunch of live from this year and just kind of catch up. I'll have to do something to keep me tied up.
Ethan wants to know, are you fishing the fourth Toyota this year?
Do I know?
Ethan wants, I got it pulled up there. He says, Jake, are you fishing a fourth Toyota this year?
No, I am not. I guess he's talking about the wild card opportunity. So no, I'm not. My schedule just kind of got so full, and I wasn't. I just didn't make that kind of work that into the schedule. But we are going to be at the Last Plains Division tournament at Lake of the Ozarks in September, and we will also be at the championship there at Wheeler in November.
Okay. You got a lot on your plate, man. Well, let's wrap this up, man. It's a great conversation. Great conversation. Anybody that came in here late.
A ton of fun with y'all.
Yeah, man, I enjoy it, dude. You're great personality. There's always good chemistry. It's a lot of valuable content was talked about tonight, and I appreciate you sharing that stuff. Next week.
Jake's the one that's been talking, not you. I mean,
right?
He's the one that should be out of a voice.
Hey, just a real quick shout out. I've been getting a lot of questions and a lot of calls, a lot of texts, a lot of inquiries about breaks and where to get those. And we're actually Performance Fishing Breaks. Danny there is actually running a promotional deal this year. Something for him and I to kind of experiment with. If you're interested in breaks, go either call or get on his website there at Performance Fishing Electronics and use the promo code JakeBreaks, and he's actually going to give you $50 off. It helps me. It allows me to kind of see where my reach is getting and where I need to grow and anything that anybody listening, anything that can help me, whether it give me an idea for a new video or some content that's maybe not getting touched on, anything that y'all want to see, or maybe even if you don't like seeing something, tell me, let me know, because all of this is, I'm pretty comfortable with fishing, but all of this stuff is a little bit new to me, and I'm still trying to, no different than what I would going into a tournament. I'm trying to keep an open mind with this and learn from every experience that I come across. So if I don't do something maybe that was entertaining, tell me. If you really like something, tell me. Let me know. It's our way of kind of gauging and knowing where we are with this. But that's super nice of Danny there. Again, the promo code is JakeBreaks, and he'll give you $50 off there. So it's a really cool deal.
Fantastic.
Sweet. I think that mosquito went down my throat.
I
think that's what happened.
A little extra protein never hurt nobody.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say next week we got we're gonna have Brock Mosley on here. And the following week we got Michael Neal. So we're gonna have some pretty good guests lined up. Most of the faces that are on here are regulars, but I do see some new faces. So we do this every Tuesday night at 8:00. I'd love to see you come back and spend the evening with us. Jake, good luck with everything, man. I appreciate you spending time with us, hanging out and sharing information. A lot of people don't talk about some of the stuff, and you're pretty open.
I
really appreciate that.
I feel like, look, I'm not a Gerald Swindle. I'm not the most humorous. I'm not the most funny. In fact, can be fairly dry at times. But I feel like that I was given this opportunity for a reason. I was given this ability. Look, I can't explain it. I don't know why. I don't know how. But I've done a lot of different things, in my relatively short life, 33 years. Like, I've done a lot of things. Fishing is the only thing that's somewhat natural to me. That just, I don't even know how, but I can just break it down. It just makes sense to me. Like, it just comes natural to me. Now, I put a tremendous amount of work into it. I put a sacrifice, and my wife and kids do for me to do this and to be, where we are. But it's ultimately always kind of been the thing that made sense to me, no matter what it was. And I don't know. It's I feel like I'm here for a reason, and I don't think that it's to win trophies. And I have to provide for my family and do those sorts of things, of course. But ultimately that's not why I'm here, and I know that's not why. And it's, you know, if I'm not going to be funny, and not that I can't be, but if that's not my thing, you know, again, I want to help people, and I want to. I've been very fortunate. I've spent a tremendous amount of time on the water, and I feel like I'm somewhat knowledgeable. And if I can just help one person out there tonight, if I made one person sit back and go, you know, I've never thought about it that way. Like, next time I go fishing, I'm going to try that, and it worked for them. All this was not that it wasn't anyway, but like that makes my whole day. Forget if I went out and caught 30 pounds. If I can help you catch one, that's way more important to me. And that's what it's all about. And that's really what I want our sport and our industry to kind of get back to if we can. I'm not trying to get on a rant or a crazy tangent, but I feel like these kinds of podcasts is what we, you know, it's what we need in the industry. It's revitalizing us. It's the education and being able to learn from someone else. It's what keeps me hungry for the game and what keeps me in it. And it just seems like it's so easy to kind of slide down that negative, like that rabbit hole of this isn't good and that's going to ruin us. And this is, well, maybe if we just thought of everything a little differently. And I look, there's problems with everything in everything. I mean, let's face it. There's always room for improvement in anything that we do and anything that we're currently doing. But I don't think that what we're doing is necessarily bringing a ton of new people to the sport with all of this negativity and controversy, whatever we want. I don't know. I've talked enough about it, more than what I want to talk about. But it's enlightening, it's fun, and it's encouraging that there's still some hope out there for just some good old boys to jump on a podcast and talk about fishing and maybe learn something. That's what I enjoy about it.
Amen to that, brother. Amen to that. All right, let's shut her down on that. That's a good positive way to end the show. Thanks a lot, Jake.
Yep. Thank y'all.
All right.
We'll see you.